Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. We have just a couple of hours before folks can begin the revelry of what is Grizz Bobcat or Bobcat Grizz weekend. I have to tell you that we just are out of a committee meeting, a community meeting, where several board members spoke to who they might be rooting for this weekend, and Regent Krause indicated that he did not get dressed in the dark. Regent Tuss, who is a UM alum, indicated that he did, and I did not indicate one way or another, except as I got to thinking about it, I am not dressed in black today. I want to take a moment to thank Dr. Jane Downey, who was also a key contributor to the conversation yesterday regarding the Common Core state standards. She is a remarkable educator here in the School of Education, and I was remiss in leaving her off my thank you list yesterday. And President Cruzado, would you please make sure that she knows that I did thank her publicly.
Certainly will.
She is a remarkable asset.
She is.
I do believe, too, that we have former State Senator Bob Hawks in the room, as well as current Representative J.P. Pomnichowski in the room, and I want to thank them for their support of the Montana University system and their advocacy on behalf of all of the students that we do serve. Before moving any further, I would like to yield the point of privilege to my fellow board member, Regent Tuss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We had a wonderful evening last night in celebrating the leadership and term of Regent Buchanan, and it was a wonderful evening. We do have one more presentation we'd like to make to Regent Buchanan at this time. From those of us on the board, Todd is always someone that we all know is very fair and even-keeled and balanced. Perhaps for one thing, and that one thing happens to be what's going to be happening here in Bozeman tomorrow. And so to remind you to keep that mind of fairness, we have a little gift that we'd like to give to you at this point, Regent Buchanan.
Yes.
And it won't matter if you dress in the dark, Regent Buchanan. Commissioner Christian just handed this to me. It was lost in the parking lot last night at the Museum of the Rockies. So if anyone would like to claim it, we will hand it off to Amy or Lynette over there momentarily. So before we continue on with our scheduled agenda, we would need to complete the ARSA agenda from yesterday. So for that, Regent Tuss, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In looking at the agenda, I believe that we recessed the committee meeting yesterday afternoon with agenda item letter I, academic program review. Dr. Moisey, can we turn this over to you?
Certainly, Chair Tuss and members of the board. These are the annual reporting of the program reviews on the campuses, and I've asked Provosts Brown and Podman from UM and MSU to talk a little bit about the process. We heard yesterday about program prioritization on a couple of the campuses. The program review process takes place on all of the campuses in the system and is really trying to, I guess in a very general sense, assess the quality of those programs. Typically there's external review from experts within the field of study that come and look at those programs. The emphasis is on really improvement in those programs. And with that, I'll ask the two provosts to give a little bit more detail on that process.
Good morning. Thank you, Neil. Chairman Tuss. I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of how we use program review, and then Perry will talk a little bit about logistics. At Montana State University, we conduct program reviews on as an ongoing process for improvement, not only to report to the Board of Regents, but also our regional accreditors. Some units use program review to bring in external people to validate the quality of their programs, and indeed, it's part of how our chemistry department is rated number 28 in the country. People come, they learn about our programs, they go back home. When they're asked to vote, they know something about us and the value of our programs. For others, it's a process to gather feedback on the strengths and weaknesses of the program so that they can respond to changes in the job market for our graduates. For others, we use the program review process to make a case for additional resources to strengthen and improve programs. And still others need the review as a signal that changes must be made in their curriculum or to serve other students who depend on those programs for their courses or to move in new directions. All of our individual degree programs get reviewed, but we typically do it at the department level. So in the reports that you see, they're usually collections of programs within a department. So you won't get as many program reviews as you get degrees, is the number of degrees that we have. We sort of collect them together. For all of our programs, we notify the departments and ask them to write a self-study. We provide the data with key data that requested by the board that we want them to include in their program reviews. And that includes number of majors, number of minors, as well as graduates. For most programs, we allow or require an external program review. Departments and deans recommend reviewers, and they are chosen in my office. We typically bring in 2 to 3 external reviewers who spend 2 days on campus meeting with students, faculty, and administrators. We meet with them at the beginning of their visit and charge them specifically to address the following in their report: enrollment and staffing, graduation rates, quality and rigor in the program, appropriateness of the department's strategic plan, effectiveness of their assessment plans and their outcomes, relationship of the program to the stated mission of the university, including the development of graduate programs on our campus, assessment of the quality of graduates in the program, strengths and commendations, and weaknesses of the program or unrealized opportunities, and in those cases, specific recommendations for actions. Those reviewers meet with me at the end of their visit in sort of an exit interview and have 2 weeks to prepare a draft report that is then reviewed by the departments for accuracy. And then the dean takes those reports and writes any recommendations that they have, and they come back to my level. We then meet with the department head and dean and talk about specific recommendations and actions that we hope to do with that report. In addition to our regional accreditation by Northwest, many of our programs hold special professional accreditations, so engineering, architecture, business, education, those types of professional programs. For those programs, we allow those external reviews to serve as their academic program review. What we report to the Regents is typically the one-page executive summary that's the outcome of those reviews, but on our campuses we have binders of the things that we cover for those reviews. Degree programs aren't static. Even though we look at the programs officially every 7 years, many of them look at their program in an ongoing manner, and there are changes that are made all the time. So if they change a course or add a new course in their curriculum, that would be handled on an internal process on our campus and not require board approval. So we have formal program review process, but there's a lot going on an annual basis in making sure that departments are looking at student outcomes and measuring something on a yearly basis. Not all program reviews result in changes in programs, but many do. So one of the reviews that you see here is the review of our business programs, and at your next meeting, you'll see that we're asking to put one of our programs in moratorium. So we actively respond to these program reviews. Harry?
Sure, thank you. And Chairman Tuss and members of the board, I'll just amplify on a couple of things that my colleague Martha has just said. But in addition, I just want to make a distinction between what we talked about yesterday with regard to program prioritization and what we're talking about now in terms of program review. Program review is primarily focused on continuous improvement. So how are we doing? How can we do better? And program prioritization is primarily focused on relevance, alignment, and financial matters. These are complementary processes. One does not substitute for the other. They are complements. There are parts of these things that go together and reinforce each other, but they're two complementary processes, both necessary in terms of our review of programs and what we're doing as we move forward with our programming. Our process is very much like that at MSU. We begin with a self-study that the program personnel put together. And I would tell you that that program self-study is usually quite revealing to the people that are putting it together and to the people that read it. When you're doing that, you discover things about your program that just sort of happen over time, and all of a sudden now you're looking at it and saying, oh, I have to write about this, and you sharpen your own idea about what your objectives are, what kind of outcomes you're achieving there, and you actually learn a lot as you look at the data that you have. Then, just like MSU, we identify the outside reviewers. They come to campus, spend some time verifying the content of the self-study and assessing the state of the program and assessing how the program articulates they're going to move forward. Those reviewers then prepare a written report to us. They submit that program report to the program, to the dean, to the provost. We all have an opportunity to look at that. Then all of that documentation, the self-report, any response that the program has, plus that reviewer's report, or the reviewer's report, goes to the appropriate faculty committees on campus that look at this. So for example, if the program has a graduate program within it, it would go to our graduate council. They would review this, and they would also issue a report about what they see within the thing. Then all of that information comes to the dean and the provost. We review all the materials, all the comments, including the program's own response to what they are seeing and hearing from these reviews. And then we meet with the program personnel to discuss the facts of the review. After that, then, my office issues a memorandum of conclusions about the program, commendations, actions to be taken. If there's a particular thing that we really have to get done right away, or if we are going to propose going into moratorium or termination or anything like that, we would put that in that document. And then from all of this documentation, as Provost Potvin has said, we prepare a one-page synopsis for you. But there is a lot of information behind that one page. One important part of the process that I can't just fail to emphasize is that when the self-study is completed, most programs immediately start reform. They don't wait for the reviewer to come in. They've discovered things that they feel they want to change and need to, and they do that. And then when they get the outside report coming in, they really accelerate that reform. And by the time that I and the dean meet with these programs, they have done a lot of the things that they have been surfaced in these reports, and it's already underway. And if they're long-term and big things, at least they have started on those, so that by the time I meet with them, they are reporting to me how they have responded to these reports already and the changes that they're making. And it's remarkable how early they start, because they just discover things and say, we've got to change this, we've got to move on it, and they do it. And that's been one of the really, really nice parts of this process of review, is it really does lead to programs making substantive change in what they're doing. And in some cases, they're pretty radical change that they may eliminate a program that they have and then propose something else that is more of a niche or something that's going to enhance their enrollment, enhance the service that they can provide to students and others. and we've got some good examples of those kinds of things. So let me go back to the very beginning. I said we have program review and program prioritization. They're complements, they're two processes. We're talking right now about review, and yesterday we were talking about prioritization, and they are not substitutes for each other, but they really do come together in many cases because both of them lead to various kinds of reform. And the faculty are generally really responsive to making that reform. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from the board? Regent Albrecht.
Chairman Tuss, thank you for that explanation. Can you articulate the student involvement in the process, please?
Sure. At least in our case, we have students that are involved usually in the self-study, and students that are heavily involved in the outside review. When the outside reviewers come, they meet with student groups, and depending upon the program, they'll meet with undergraduate groups, they'll meet with graduate groups, they may meet with officers from student clubs as well, so they're involved in that part of the process then. And then in many cases, but not every case, actually when I end up meeting with the department, there'll be a couple student representatives there as well, because all of these meetings are open to the students just as well. But they're really involved in helping to provide information about the programs to both the self-study and to the reviewers.
We have students participate in the review process as well, typically after the self-study is done, when our external reviewers or an internal review team is on campus. They meet with students.
I have a question of perhaps both of you. There seems to be pretty deep support amongst the regents on what we talked about yesterday in terms of the prioritization. And I apologize if you mentioned this and I didn't catch it. But is that a process beyond what you're talking about with program review that you go about on a regular basis, or you will? Pretty impressed with what Billings and Northern have done. Can you talk about your two campuses with respect to that piece?
Sure. Typically, when you do program prioritization, you have a goal in mind. Either you want to focus your programs, or you're in a financial situation where you need to generate funding to support part of your mission. So I usually think of program review, either you need to generate money because you have a deficit, or you need to reallocate resources into an area that is your core mission. We have not done that. We feel we have a robust program review process, and I think because we're a larger university, we tend to have more students in our program, so we have fewer low enrollment programs. And oftentimes, if we have low enrollment programs, they're using the same courses that a major is using, so that deletion of a minor, for example, does not impact finances at all.
So I would just comment, Regent Tuss, that in the last several years, we haven't done a comprehensive program prioritization, but we have in terms of programs within individual colleges where they have looked at the programs that they offer and have gone through change that has occurred in reallocations within the individual colleges. In addition to that, we last year, or year and a half ago, went through a process of identifying programs of national distinction, which was a prioritization program to identify some of the programs that we would actually make new investments in to be able to enhance their particular position, so that we were able to identify where we were going to make investments to strengthen some programs, and that was part of a prioritization. But it was not a comprehensive across the whole university. I was taken quite a bit yesterday by the elaborate process that we saw that MSUB has built, building upon what happened at Northern, and certainly there are some interesting parts of that that I think would be very useful, very much at the college level and maybe beyond that. You may appreciate when you have 8 or 9 separate colleges within a university, it gets to be a fairly complex process. But I think there's some very interesting things there that could lead to, at the right time, could lead to complete comprehensive prioritization. But we do prioritization within the colleges, and we do it for specialized programs like that program of national distinction that we did.
Okay, thank you. Regent McLean?
Thank you. I enjoyed the presentation a lot, and yesterday I spoke to the fact that I think it's up to us as a board, I think, to empower you as the campuses to do what is relevant and to do what matters on your respective campuses. And so I welcome this conversation. I think it's a very important one, and I think as we consider it, I would just revisit my comments yesterday that when campuses feel that a program review needs to take place, I think we need to empower you to do that when you feel prioritization needs to take place, et cetera. Additionally, I want to say that I think this conversation fits nicely into the overall quality question that has been asked in regards to the performance funding piece. Zach and a few others spent some time Wednesday night on the phone with Stan Jones and Bruce Vandal, and we had a great conversation about what this quality piece meant. And what I'm hearing from both the presentation yesterday on prioritization and the presentation today on program review is that just as we have been noting in each of our conversations from Complete College America, Complete College Montana, faculty are a part at every corner of ensuring that quality remains in place. And so as we continue to ask ourselves those questions about quality, as we turn the corner into performance funding, I hope that we will reflect on and look at even tuning, but these three mechanisms that we already have. And just finally, I just want to reiterate the point that I think it's important for us as a board to empower the campuses to take the necessary steps to do with your programs what is relevant and best for your students and your programs. Thank you.
President Engstrom.
Regent Tuss, members of the board, I'd like to make a couple of points and perhaps ask the provost to elaborate on each of them just a little bit. Another very important tool that we have to maintain quality and excellence is disciplinary accreditation. And so many programs, many departments undergo their own separate accreditation process independent from the overall institutional accreditation done by Northwest Commission. And so one question might be to ask them to give an example or two of how the disciplinary accreditation process maybe overlaps with our program review. And then secondly, I know on our campus, in many cases, some very significant curricular changes have come out of the program review process. And I was going to ask at least Provost Brown and Provost Potvin too, maybe to give just an example. Maybe journalism graduate program would be a good one, Perry. So thank you.
Sure, if I could just begin with President Engstrom's questions there. So journalism is a good example. They have a disciplinary accreditation, and that substitutes for the internal review because we don't ask the faculty to duplicate putting together self-studies and things like that. They can do it one time, and we can do it at that accreditation time. And Provost Potvin mentioned that briefly in her remarks. So in the case of journalism a few years ago, when the accreditors came to campus and really took a look at their program, and based upon the self-study that had been done, it was very clear that we had a master's program that was a general journalism program that was like the program that virtually everybody else had in the country. And it wasn't attracting anybody special to the program or really providing something that I think, fit the particular needs of Montana or our region of the country. And so as they looked at that and as they worked with the accreditors on that, it was very clear that if they made some changes, they could really have something special. And so what they did is they came to you and they actually terminated the general master's degree in journalism and substituted for that a master's degree in natural resource and environmental journalism, which was very science-oriented. And so now they have a program that is unique in the country, that is attracting stellar graduate students from around the country, and is intimately linked with the science programs and others on campus, so that they really have their students getting a grounding in the facts about these things and still journalism training. And so that was a complete change, elimination of one program, substitution of another, that is really making a difference in their program. And that's the kind of thing that can happen out of these reviews, and it does more often than we think it probably does. And you may have a good example of that kind of thing happening as well.
Sure. At our last board meeting, you approved the increase of 2 credits in our architecture program. And that was driven by the accreditors for the program, that they needed to have a certain number of credits in the professional areas. So that would be one example. We're also accredited by business accreditation, AACSB. And again, in the program review you have before you, one of the recommendations is to put into moratorium, I think it's the management of information systems. We have a declining number of students in that interest area. Our business program is having conversations with computer science to do something different. And so we're going to phase out one program so that we could potentially do something that better serves the needs of the state. So we allow the self-study and the accreditation report from those professional accreditations in the discipline to substitute for our campus program for program review.
If I might just add one additional thing to it, one of the things that we get often from the outside accreditors, but we also pick it up in internal reviews and the reviews that we do of programs on a regular basis, is we sometimes, they do identify for us things that just seem commonplace to us, but they're really health and safety issues that we might have that don't fit national standards and things like that. And that spurs us on right away to begin to solve some of those problems, or there may be space problems or something like that that we need to deal with. And they're things that you learn to live with and you don't think about, and they come in and they alert you to those things, and then you're in action right away. And so that's another benefit that we get out of this whole process.
Thank you. Further questions from the board? Questions? Regent Buchanan.
Thank you, Regent Tuss. I'm going to digress just a little bit onto this accreditors conversation. I don't know if everybody else on the board got the letter from, I can't remember the name of the senator, but he's working on an effort to really restructure the relationship between the feds and accrediting agencies. I don't know if you saw the letter, making very sharp criticism of accreditors and how they have gone about creating their models for assessing quality. And I guess since you guys are the provost, is there a movement to challenge this accreditation process? And I'll add one personal assessment. When I've sat through 3 or 4 accreditation processes, or at least reviews of the accreditors report when we've gone through it, and one of the criticisms or the things that I've been skeptical about when I look at some of the reports is many of the things that I see that are being measured are not outcomes of the quality of education, but instead the management structure related to how we manage these protocols. And this particular letter that we got, and I'll have to, you were nodding your head. Somebody nodded their head that they saw the letter. Jeff, did you see the letter from the senator? Making the case that it's one of the accreditors' standards for assessing quality is one of the catalysts behind the growth of administrative expenses, because, again, they're assessing how programs are managed, not the outcomes of those. And I thought that was him sending this letter and trying to start this. He asked us to sign on to it. And is there a conversation about kind of changing the process of accreditation? Again, the crux of this letter had to do with the fact that if you're not accredited, you don't get a lot of federal aid. And so this senator was saying, we send all this federal aid to people that have been accredited, although he doesn't agree with many of the standards that the accreditation agencies are using. So I know it's a little off topic, but we've been talking about accreditation, and it was of interest to me to get that letter, and I'm wondering, is there a conversation that's occurring?
So I want to try to elucidate the differences in accreditation. We have particular professional programs that are discipline-specific that have national professional accreditation. That would be like business and journalism. Mm-hmm. And then we have regional accreditation. And the Northwest Commission, which is our regional accreditor, has a very different accreditation process than most of the other regional accreditors. We saw a list of those 7 or 8 yesterday. And our regional accreditation focuses on every 2 years, we're writing a report with specific goals. So in year 1, it's identifying your mission and core themes of your university, and the Regents have approved those for all of our campuses. The third year review focuses on whether the institutions have the resources to accomplish their mission, and clearly the number of oversight units and administration and students, but also facilities, instruction. They look at class sizes and those types of things are part of that review. In year 5, they looked at the campus's strategic plan to see if the plan aligns with the mission of the institution. And in year 7, they come and do a comprehensive review to see if you have achieved the outcomes that you set out in year 1. That process is very different than other regional accreditors in the country.
In Regent Buchanan, I would just comment that the movement that has gone on in just the last few years for the regional accreditation is much more focused on outcomes than it was in the past. In the past, it was primarily focused on all of the input factors that we all know and have seen. Now, still in getting to outcomes, they do ask questions about organization and structure and resources and things like that. But the goal that they have now is what are the outcomes, what is happening to students, what is happening in the education that allows you to get those students to the place that they want to be, to really realize the dreams that they have and to be productive members of society. It has changed dramatically. That doesn't mean that it's not going to continue to change and get better at this, and outside critics and comments will help us get even better at this process, but it has changed rather dramatically just in the last few years, and the process that Provost Potvin mentioned is relatively new for us, and we're all learning how to implement a new process that's outcomes-oriented.
President Engstrom.
Regent Tuss, Regent Buchanan, I'd like to add a little bit to that conversation because I serve as one of the commissioners on the Northwest Commission of Colleges and Universities, as does Richard Littlebear from Chief Dolknife College. And Daniel, didn't you tell me that someone else got an invitation from Helena College? I'm sorry?
Val Martinez.
Okay, so we should have 3 Montanans on that commission now. And as the provosts have indicated, I'm very proud of the Northwest Commission because they really got out front of this conversation that you're talking about. About the time I started on the commission 3 years ago, they were in the final stages of revamping their whole process to very much an outcomes-based approach. And instead of having this huge deal every 10 years and then you forget about it for the other 9 years, it's this ongoing process. So it's more work, but it's, I think, a much healthier process. And I can attest that they are very outcomes-based. And just about every institution in Montana, there will be recommendations to think harder about the outcomes that you're articulating and how they tie to metrics and that sort of thing. So I think we can be pretty happy that our accrediting, regional accrediting unit is kind of in the lead on this. So that's a good place to be. Thank you.
Regent Buchanan, I think we have to be careful too when we think about how we define administrators. As we become more focused on the success of students, on our campus we have had to add additional counselors, additional service for veteran students, and I think we need to separate student support versus administrators too, and really know what it is we're looking at.
Regent Regala.
Provost Brown, obviously UM is in a bear market, and Provost Potvin obviously in a bull market. So I'm just wondering, what are some of the significant obstacles to maintaining quality that your universities face? I guess what would be the key issue in ensuring that academic program integrity is maintained? I guess that might be too broad of a question.
No,
if so,
yeah.
feel free to defer. Yeah.
No, Regent Regala, it's a very interesting question, and one of the challenges is certainly keeping people focused on the outcomes and keeping them just driven to do that and the student focus that they have. And so anytime that you're in, as you would call it, a bear market, people get a little bit more concerned about the bear part of this particular, and not the grizzly part of it, but the downside of the bear part of the thing. And so it's part of it is just keeping them focused on the outcome. But, you know, there's, even when you're in a bear market, it's an interesting kind of thing. You really work hard not to change the quality of what you're doing unless you're changing it for the good. So you have to look at, do we do as much of something as we did before, but not change the quality? So let me give you an example, and it comes from my colleague Sharon O'Hare here. But if you had a dinner party and you had invited 15 people to that dinner party, you would have 15 place settings. And a couple calls up and says they're not coming. And do you leave the 15 place settings there, or do you take 2 away? You take 2 place settings away, but you still serve the same meal that you were going to serve so that the quality meal is provided to the 13 people that are there. Now, that's just a little simple analogy. But if you keep your eye on the outcomes that you're interested in, that's what you're going to do. And you will continue to move forward by providing the quality education because the focus is on the outcomes. But it is a challenge because people will get distracted, they'll get worried about other parts of the thing, and you need to work on making sure that you have all of the elements that are absolutely necessary for that quality educational meal in our particular case. So that's a general answer because it's a tough question we could probably spend the next 4 or 5 hours talking about.
And I would add, you know, when enrollment growth is occurring, you have to become more efficient with the resources that you have. We have to find classrooms so that we can offer more sections to our students. So we think about how to do things differently and become more efficient. And in part, offering our core in the evening frees up classrooms in the daytime. So without compromising quality, we look at how we can do things differently to accommodate more students. We have to be flexible and nimble in adding the, at first, non-tenure track faculty to help serve the needs immediately, and then think about how we're going to transition that long term. And we are also looking at using technology in ways that can enhance the opportunities for students. So we've implemented DegreeWorks. It's a degree audit system. Students can do more of advising on their own because they know exactly where they are in their program of study. It pulls information from the transcripts, and students can tell exactly what they have left to do in their degree program. So it actually allows the advising sessions with faculty to be more productive and focused on other things like career choices and opportunities for internships and things. So we are totally committed to not compromising quality, indeed, how to help to increase the success of our students and graduation rates and retention rates.
Further questions? Regent Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a question. I think it's really addressed more towards President Engstrom. But my question relates to what we're hearing about program review. At our last meeting, there was a strategy that was put in place by University of Montana, by the president, to really address some of the enrollment issues that exist there, the challenges that you have. And I was wondering how, and I don't want to veer off from our discussion here, but did that strategy and that effort that you're doing, does it tie in at all with what we see with the program review process, or is that 2 separate efforts that are happening?
Regent Robinson, members of the board, thanks for that question. It certainly does tie in. I mean, we, as part of our strategy, we put in place a number of working groups over the summer and into the fall, and some of them are looking at topics like revenue generation, new ways of revenue generation, new ways to save money, and so on. But one of the working groups really focused on our academic programming and asking the question, is our portfolio of programming as optimal for today's world as it can be. And so we have a group of folks led by Dean Comer, one of our deans, exploring that question. And in a way, it is sort of a prelude to an academic prioritization or academic alignment process, I would say, in that, we want to know, are there gaps in our programming that we should have that are appropriate for today's world? Are there programs that are no longer relevant to today's world? And I don't think there are very many of those, but so it's very much related to the conversation we had yesterday about prioritization and the relationship with that and enrollment growth. So as that committee, that working group completes its work this fall, and they'll report out. They've already given us a preliminary report, but they'll report out in more detail this fall. And it may well be that we'll make some adjustments in the portfolio of our programming to make sure that we stay as relevant as we possibly can to today's students' interests and needs. Thank you.
Is there a conversation, Regent Albrecht had talked about the involvement of students in this process. Bless you. Is there involvement with industry associated with these particular programs about whether or not these particular programs are hitting the mark in terms of what they need from a workforce development perspective? Is that taken into account?
Sure. So, Regent Tuss, one of the things that happens in terms of the on-site review, when the reviewers are on-site, whether it's an accreditation review or a internal review that we bring in the outside people on, they almost inevitably meet with a community group, usually a business group, and others that are related to that particular area, and provide quite a bit of feedback on the success of graduates of the program, the needs that they have for the future, and things like that. So that's another component. Just like the student component and weighing in on this, we have these outsiders that weigh in on the process as well. And that's required for most of the disciplinary accreditations as it is. Those disciplinary organizations, in effect, in their guidelines, demand that you do that, but we do that also for the internal review so that we get all these perspectives that maybe alumni, business people, government people in the community, depending upon the area and what's relevant. Oh, sure. And the President Engstrom's asked me just to comment on something else that we do often, and that's have various kinds of roundtables with business and government people in our community. And we had an interesting one, 3 weeks ago or something like that, where we brought in a number of members from the cyber community within Missoula. You may be aware that Missoula has been named as one of the innovation startup areas in the country, one of the top 25 in the country. And there's this huge underground to me because I was just ignorant, but a group of people that really have startup businesses in this area, and we brought many of them together to share with us. We had all of our computer science faculty there, some of our business faculty, some of our mathematics faculty, and others, so that they could interact with people. And so that's another mechanism that we've had for getting this kind of input, and that will go not just into program review, but it really is one of those continuous things, like Provost Potvin says, that goes on throughout the years and between these major reviews.
At Montana State University, almost all of our professional programs have external advisory boards, and they meet at least annually, sometimes 2 or 3 times a year. And so the programs are getting constant feedback, questioning, and those people come from the business communities both around the country and locally.
And that's true for us as well.
Thank you. Further questions? Further questions from the board? Regent Albrecht.
Chairman Tuss, Provost Brown and Potvin, could you please articulate on how research is handled in this process? Because there's such a value to research. And I've heard concern about the fact that when there is so much focus on outcomes, which is very important in this process, how research is hard to measure in some ways, and how you continue to maintain the integrity and continue to value that as a critical part of what we offer at our schools. Can you talk about that in the process?
Certainly, Regent Albrecht. For those research-intensive programs, and even other programs, but certainly those that are doing very active research engagement, that is part of this process. The self-study will address scholarship and their activities. And there are a number of measures of the research output. And certainly one of the things you're looking for is the quality of the research and how much it is used by other people, whether it's other scientists, whether it's people in business or government or wherever it is. And so those measures of output and the measures of utilization. And I would say that many times in our advisory boards for various disciplines, as well as for the reviews that are conducted, and when you bring in the outside people, they will comment quite a bit on the research and how it's been utilized by them to move their businesses forward or to answer some policy questions that they have. But it becomes a major part of the thing. So if I were looking at our biological sciences division, for example, there would be sections of the report, the self-study, and of the review that are addressing the research that's being done and how that is utilized by other people. Citation indexes, the amount of research, whether or not the sponsors come back for more or they abandon us because we didn't do a good job, but how much they come back for more, and then how people are utilizing that in further science or in business or in government or wherever it happens to be.
I'd have to agree, and we use the same metrics at Montana State University, but beyond that, actually, measurement of the quality of research is much easier to do than measuring the quality of teaching. And it's part of every one of our program reviews, and again, there are things that you can measure in research in terms of quality of publications and grant funding and all. And so that is part of what we do as a research university. But also when we're doing program review, we're looking at the output and the capacity of faculty to do research and making sure that that is aligned well with the teaching mission so that folks who are very strong in research have lighter teaching loads and vice versa. So it's an opportunity to make sure you right-size those responsibilities.
And I would just add that I hope as a board we can continue to see and value the importance of research as we move along, and also particularly as it relates to workforce development and the opportunities that we have, particularly when we're faced with a variety of revenue challenges. I think there's great opportunity there as we move forward. So thank you for the fact that you do value the continuation of that.
At Montana State University, we have a research requirement for every one of our undergraduate students, and that is actually a big draw for our campus. And to try to, students have good input into wanting more of those research experiences, so our challenge is how do we provide that often high-intensive, high-touch environment so that our students have that opportunity, help to create jobs here and help them to stay.
Regent Buchanan.
Real quick, are the affiliate campuses and the two-year campuses, do we all go through a similar review on the same calendar, or is it independent and autonomous? How linked are those efforts with each other and the flagships?
Yeah, well, Regent Buchanan, the first thing is that by board policy, we all do the 7-year review. So that's going on. And of course, they're like other campuses, they're going through regular changes and reviews that are going on between the 7 years. So we all do that. The processes vary a little bit with the individual campus and what fits them, but they have those processes as well. And what would have been 2 days ago, Deputy Commissioner Moisey conducted a meeting of all of the campuses just to talk about the processes of review and how it was going on all the campuses, and to make sure that we had some understanding what was happening on the 2-year campuses, what was happening on the regionals, and what was happening at the flagships. And so we're in that as a constant conversation. And I don't know if he wants to comment on that, but that's certainly something that has been on our mind, but everybody's doing it.
Seeing no further questions, Dr. Moisey, is that a wrap on this item?
Yeah, that is a wrap on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank both of you very much.
Thank you very much. Great conversation. I'm being told that the Blackstone people have a pretty tight schedule this afternoon, so we as a board need to be real cognizant of time as we move through the next pieces of our agenda so that we can conclude on time. At this point then, yes, we're going to have the MAS update, and then we will move into the MUS benefits update with Connie Welsh. But I just wanted to make sure that folks were very cognizant of the clock as we move forward. Thank you.
Wonderful. Chairperson, members of the board, thank you for having me this morning. For the record, my name is Lindsay Murdoch, and I'm here representing Montana Associated Students and the Not in Our State Task Force. This task force was developed out of the Not in Our State statewide summit on sexual assault prevention this August, and we wanted to come today to give you a little bit of an update on how far we've come since then and where we're hoping to go from here. So we had our inaugural meeting on Wednesday evening, and we had representatives from 5 different schools. We had a couple schools who were unable to make it because of weather and other outside circumstances. And then also we had a handful of individuals attending Allen's Memorial. So we are working around a couple of absences, but we were really excited, and we had a really wonderful first meeting. So I handed out a sheet to everybody that was double-sided, and on one side it had the outcomes and some of our identified statewide goals, and then on the other side, it just had some of the new federal mandates that we had discussed also during this summit. So if we could hit the next slide. So for those of you who were unable to attend the summit, just a really quick review. We had it in the middle of August here at Montana State University. We had a screening of The Invisible War and a panel, including Lieutenant Governor Walsh. We also had an opening by Governor Bullock the next morning. We had a keynote training by Dr. David Lesak, who is a resident expert on sexual assault and then what it looks like in terms of the neuroscience and the biology of that, and the neuroscience of trauma as well. So all of those were really informative for our students who were sitting in on those presentations, and also for our administrators and those who work on our campus in dealing with and supporting students who are coming forth after sexual assault, stalking, harassment, anything like that. We also had breakout sessions that focus on counseling techniques and how to be properly investigating in a way and moving through these policies that is ensuring student success and ensuring that students are being supported well when they're coming forth, and beyond just students, also faculty and staff. And then finally, focusing on primary prevention. And so how do we continue to educate about this in a way that is beneficial and that is very inclusive, and ensuring that all of our students are empowered to be the change that they would like to see on our campus and across our state. The second day had a very campus-focused agenda. We had student leaders from all across the MUS campuses, and I'm going to hand out we have pictures of the posters that we were doing for action planning, and these will highlight some of the different ideas that our students were bringing forth. For those of you who were not there and who were unable to see these visuals, they were really powerful because our students had some pretty incredible ideas and a lot of passion behind those. So hand those out. And then we focused again a lot on action planning and how we as campuses can move forward, and then be collecting and moving the state forward. So one of the things that came out of the summit this summer was we need to be addressing this as a state. We need to not just be addressing this as MSU or U of M or MSU Northern, but we need to be addressing this as a state collectively, so that way we can be sharing resources, we can be creating a clearinghouse for these resources, we can be sharing best practices, and then we can also be utilizing the excitement that students have to bring the campuses to the next level. So with that, we decided that our task force membership should include student leadership and campus representatives from each campus in the Montana University system. So we're really excited because this gives everybody equal opportunity to bring forth ideas and also to be sharing those resources and bringing those resources back to their campuses. So we met again Wednesday night with this group and talked a little bit about how are we going to move this forward. And so we talked a lot about the identified statewide goals that we had, and we focused on prioritizing those and then how we were going to prioritize those in a way that allowed us to meet those goals. So one of the initial things that we realized we need to work on is this clearinghouse for best practices. Right now, each and every individual campus is at a different a different place in how they are dealing with sexual assault and how they're dealing with primary prevention and education. And so we want to be able to create this clearinghouse so that way we can be meeting everyone where we're at and utilizing the resources that we have to ensure that we're bringing everyone forward at a pace that makes sense for those individual campuses, because we realize that an MSU Northern or a Montana Tech doesn't necessarily have the same resources or the same staff capabilities that a U of M or an MSU does. And so we want to ensure that we're using this clearinghouse and providing these resources in a way that makes sense for our campuses. Second, we really want to ensure statewide support, and we already have that from the campuses, and we also have that with the student affairs officers. As you all saw yesterday, that was identified as one of their top goals for this upcoming year, and so we're really excited to be working with these two groups in tandem as we continue to move this forward. Third, a statewide PR campaign, and determining a campaign that uses a slogan like "Not in Our State" and then allows everyone to be able to personalize that and localize that to their campus. Here at MSU, we've done that in a way where we also say "Not in Our House." And so we have a "Not in Our House" task force that's made up of student leaders from all across campus who are working forward a more inclusive and supportive campus here on MSU's campus. So that's just one example of how this can be changed and utilized to create statewide awareness around these. And then finally, we want this task force to be the steering committee for future statewide summits. And that will be something that will allow for not only the framework of this task force, but also for the summits to be something that's sustainable and something that we can continue to do every year, and something that also has buy-in from all of the campuses each and every year. This year, we had every single campus send representatives and also put forth money to fund the summit. And so this is really meaningful for a lot of our students when we all know that we are attending campuses who are prioritizing this not only with their funding, but also with their time and with their campus administrators who are coming forth and saying, we want to be here because this is a priority to us. And so we're really excited about having that statewide support and also continuing to plan and move forward these summits. So from there, I don't know if there's any other questions, comments, concerns. We will be having bi-monthly conference calls rather with this task force, so that way we can continue moving forward. And we have a liaison from our task force to the student affairs officers group, so that way we can, again, continue to ensure that these groups are working together. And then we're hoping to be meeting quarterly in accordance with the Board of Regents meetings, as this is a really great time that everyone's coming together anyways. So you can expect to continue hearing updates, if not formally on the agendas, at least informally during our lunches with the Regents. And then finally, we will be working towards planning another summit again in August, so be expecting a save the date for that soon. It will be again sometime in that middle of August realm, so that way we can bring everyone together and capitalize on that pre-coming back to school momentum as we move these initiatives forward and continue to support our students and move forward with this really important initiative that is critical to student success. So with that, I will thank you all for your time and for all that you do as members of this board and as individuals who are committed to moving higher education in this state forward. We really do appreciate your time and your commitment to the students all across Montana. Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you for your incredible leadership on this critical issue, and please extend to your colleagues in the Montana Associated Students our thanks for their leadership as well.
Certainly, will do.
Regent McLean.
Thank you. I would echo that. I want to thank you for your leadership, Student Regent Rogala, and all of the students who participated in this summit and have participated in the effort since then. Student safety, of course, is our #1 priority here at the board table and across our campuses. I had the opportunity to facilitate faculty and staff conversations the second day of the summit, and one of the themes that resonated repeatedly was, how do we know we're not just going to talk about this now and then have it be forgotten once we start the school year? And so I would again charge the campuses with the task of bringing student safety issues, bringing this conversation back to your faculty tables, and make sure that any conversations that can relate to this, any professional development that can relate to student safety and providing safety for our students on our campuses, are happening, so that it happens by design on every single campus rather than by chance. And so you students have provided a great, clear vision for all of us, and I think it's incumbent upon us now to take the ball and to keep it moving. So thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Regent Regala.
Are the students from Miles City Community College here? Oh, right over here. I just want to recognize the Miles City Community College efforts on the Not in Our State task force and how we can really share best practices across the university system. There's been a lot of internal addressing of this issue, but not necessarily extending out into the community. And so the Miles City Community College is working with high schools in Miles City, as well as community members, to extend these efforts. And I think that's a great way that this group can continue to share practices to some of our larger universities.
Yeah, and we've had a couple of them run in the back. So if we could just, again, thank them for their leadership on this, and for understanding that this is not something that, this conversation does not start when we get to the college level, but it really is up to us as leaders in the community and as student leaders to be reaching out to our middle and our high school counterparts. And so a huge thank you to them for their leadership and their commitment to their community.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I would now open the mic up to any additional public comment on the agenda items for the ARSA committee. Is there any additional public comment on the ARSA agenda? Seeing none, Madam Chair, that concludes our committee meeting.
We'll come back to it. All right, the next item we have on our agenda is the MUS benefits updates. We don't need action on this item at all. Basically, it's about sharpening our compliance skills. We need to make sure that we are following policy in regards to the hours of our faculty, et cetera. Not a policy shift. We just need to make sure that our institutions across the system comply with what is in place. And so we look forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board, and thank you for the opportunity to provide a little update. Periodically, my name is Connie Welsh. I'm Director of Benefits with the Montana University System. And so periodically, we like to appear before you and visit a little bit about the Montana University System Employee Benefit Plan and provide you with information about what its status is and how it fits in with the overall mission of the university system. The first part today we'll talk about is an employer plan update. Just a little bit of overall background. The Montana University System Employer Benefit Plan is the second largest employer plan in Montana after the state of Montana Employee Plan. We cover 7,100 employees, about 300 non-Medicare retirees, so folks who are not yet Medicare eligible, 1,000 Medicare retirees, and we have a total covered employee and retiree count of about 8,400. We cover 18,000 Montanans, and our population spends about $72.4 million in fiscal year 2013. So we're a big plan. A lot of money goes through this plan. I wanted to show you, we've worked with our actuary, and the Inter-Unit Benefits Advisory Council provides advice to the commissioner and to the office in the operation of the plan. So our consulting actuary prepares some documentation for us, and I wanted to show you kind of the status of our plan. Here's our history of our most recent actual expenditures for fiscal years 2011, 12, and 13, shown in the dark blue bar, and then projections for fiscal years 2014, 2015, and 2016. The Montana University System Benefit Plan operates from July 1 through June 30th of the following year as our plan year. The red line that terminates in a dotted line at the top is a compilation of the employer contribution. So for every employee in the university system, $806 currently is set aside per month for them to utilize in order to purchase benefits under what is known as our cafeteria plan, an Internal Revenue Code Section 125 cafeteria plan. So what that shows us is that we have had a good track record in 2011, 12, and 13. You can see we've had kind of an unusual thing in healthcare expenditures, a fairly flat trend. Now, some of that is due to some benefit plan changes, but we made some of those changes and visited with you in the past about those because of the Affordable Care Act. So during that time, we have made some changes, but we've had expansions of benefits, and we're very proud of the fact that we've been able to continue to hold our costs at a reasonable level. We apply projections moving forward. The light purple bar is a low trend assumption for medical trend, and the magenta color at the top of the bar is a high trend assumption. The red line that shows our employer revenue is really a measure against what percentage of the total plan costs could be covered by the employer plan versus having to ask our employees to reach into their pocket. Now, if you are an employee of the Montana University system, that employer contribution of $806 is sufficient to pay for health insurance to cover yourself, a dental plan to cover yourself, a small life insurance policy, and a small long-term disability policy. And then there's still money, and I'll show you how much left over, to purchase coverage if you choose to insure your family or if you buy additional benefits. What I like about this projection, and I like seeing this when our actuary shows us this, is we have currently sufficient income from the employer contribution to cover the costs through 2015, even in the worst case scenario, without asking our employees to reach in their pocket. So that's good news. And through 2016, we think we could cover, in the low case scenario, with the higher cost scenario, we may not be able to cover all of those costs. Okay, this is one of my favorite discussions at this moment, because occasionally I hear from members or from leaders around the university system, gee, we don't think our benefits are as good as our competitors. And we are in the business of competing for and retaining and attracting talent. And so what we do is periodically we review how our benefit package compares, and we'll talk about this in two phases. First, I'll talk about the medical portion of the healthcare portion of the benefits, and then at the end of my remarks this morning, I'll talk about the retirement plan. We surveyed 9 states, all of the contiguous states with Montana, and then Utah and Colorado. Those are our main competitors for where we recruit and retain for faculty. And what we looked at and then ranked, we had our actuary create and survey. There's quite an extensive amount of data that we collected about the individual benefits, the deductibles, the out-of-pocket costs, a number of different factors. And they created what's called a plan value. And that's an actuarial measure of the value of the benefits included in the plan. So we normalize and benchmark that so that we can do an apples-to-apples comparison. And as you can see, out of 14 university systems, and we've listed here both of our plans. The Montana University system has 2 plans we offer. The managed care plan has about 17,000 members in it. Number 14 there is the Montana University system traditional plan with about 1,000 members in it. I'll talk about that a little bit later, how the traditional plan fits in. But the majority of our folks are in the managed care plan, and I think we are positioned fairly well, given particularly when we take a look at what our employer contribution is toward benefits. And then on the right hand, what we did is calculate the difference between the employer contribution and the employee single rate to determine what an excess out-of-pocket either cost or surplus would be. As you can see, the university system far and away has the largest surplus. As a matter of fact, of those that reported in this list, only Montana is the one that covers 100% of the employer costs with some excess. Now, I can't say that Oregon University system, South Dakota University system, are others who reported that they cover the single employee's costs in total. Our plan is what's called a defined contribution plan. So that $806 we give to you, and then if you have excess funds, you can set that aside in a federally tax-advantaged flexible savings account. They didn't report to us if they do anything other than that or just simply cover the cost. But if you look at Oregon, North Dakota, Idaho, and Washington, who are above us on the list for some of their systems, other than Oregon University System, which is combined with their state employees, by the way. And they are looking at separating those out. They're working toward moving their university system out from under their state employees. It's the only one that has a comparable out-of-pocket result with our plan. So I think that that speaks well for our plan. I'm also particularly happy when I look at what our single employee rate is compared to some of the others on the list, particularly those who had a higher plan value. So we deliver a lot of benefits very efficiently and for a good cost and a good value for our folks. So, okay, next what we did is we also compete for talent within governmental plans primarily in Montana. So we looked at 4 areas of economic concentration and geographic concentration for our university system employees: Missoula County, Lewis and Clark, Gallatin, and Yellowstone. And then we compared large governmental plans there. Primarily cities and school districts are where we compete most for talent. There are also county plans, but they tend to be not quite as rich as school district or city plans, and we don't tend to attract as many employees from that pool, so we just limited it to this. Of those in Montana, only the city of Bozeman ranks above the Montana University System Managed Care Plan as far as a total plan value. And then when we take a look, we weren't able to find out what the single employee rate was for that. They didn't report that to our actuary. But we did look at what the employer contribution is in our out-of-pocket. And again, we compare very favorably. If we look at other governmental plans that have cover the full cost, the state of Montana employee plan is similarly configured. Their plan value is not as high as ours. The single employee rate is higher than ours is by $134, I believe, for what are very, very comparable benefits in many ways. You will notice there's a difference in employer contribution, and for those that are familiar with the way that higher education and state government are funded by the legislature, you might wonder why that employer contribution is not identical. There's a timing lag between when the employer contribution that's set by the legislature goes up for the state of Montana versus the university system. We go up on July 1, they go up on a January 1 basis. Okay, as Regent McLean mentioned, I wanted to provide you a little bit of information about the Affordable Care Act and compliance overview and its impacts on our plan. The Affordable Care Act, I mentioned yesterday when we talked about student insurance, provides us a lot of opportunity to coordinate for the first time between what's largely been a private sector employer effort to deliver health care versus public efforts. And so in the Act, it's called the Employer Shared Responsibility Requirements portion, deal with that interface. We in the industry have kind of shortened it down to play or pay. So we'll talk about what that means. And the Montana University System has chosen to play. And by that, we mean that we continue to offer benefits as an employer under the guidelines and the stipulations required of us under the Affordable Care Act. There are 3 conditions. Those 3 are: we must provide a minimum value plan, we must provide an affordable plan, and we must offer coverage to 95% of the employees within our system who would meet Affordable Care Act eligibility requirements. And that one is the one that's going to take a little bit of work. As far as minimum value plans, our benefits must meet an actuarial equivalency benchmark compared to a state plan that's selected by the Montana Insurance Commissioner. So we actually have compared to those plans. The Montana University System traditional plan is above 70% when it's compared to that benchmark. It's actually 73%, I believe. And the Montana University System Managed Care plans are 80%, or actually 87%, I believe, is the actuary benchmark comparability. And so we compare very well. Affordability, we cannot charge a premium to our employees that exceeds 9.5% of the W-2 reported wages of our employee. That's an IRS safe harbor. Originally, they started out with 9.5% of the household income. And then in comments on the regulations, we noted that we do not know our employees' household income, and we are not in the business as an employer of means testing. And so the safe harbor was created. As I mentioned before, we pay 100% of the cost of covering the employee plus those core benefits, so we will always meet the affordability test. The requirements for the Affordable Care Act eligibility are a little different. We thought originally under Montana law, okay, we cover 100% of our folks and or at 100% of their premium cost, and we have a very generous Montana law requirement for providing benefits. So let me explain that. Generally, under federal wage and hour law, you think of 40 hours per week as full-time employment. The Affordable Care Act prescribes that those employees for an employer who has 50 or more employees who work 30 hours or more a week are eligible for benefits, and we must provide to 95% of those folks. Well, under Montana law, since the 1970s, we have required that public entities, so not only the higher education system, but also cities, counties, state government, public entities, must provide benefits to employees if they work 20 hours or more per week, and they work that schedule or are regularly scheduled to work for a period of 6 months or greater. So we thought, oh, we're golden. We're already more generous than the federal law, so we will always meet it. We provide benefits at this 20-hour and 6-month threshold. But that nothing has been that simple under the Affordable Care Act, and why did I think this would be? Just hoping, I think. But here's how we have to look at that under the ACA. We must develop and track in a different methodology, and ACA really looked at hourly employment and converting everything to a wage and hour type basis. But so much employment in the United States is not hourly. So our industry is one particularly where we do not track hours for a large percentage of our employees, and so far the feds have not provided us guidance on that. Instead, what they have done is said we must develop a reasonable methodology for determining what constitutes a 30-hour work equivalency per week for university system employees. And so our challenge really for our population is how do we determine what constitutes an hour of work equivalent for non-tenured teaching staff, for coaches, for a number of other individuals within our industry. And so we've been struggling, like everyone else across the country in the higher education industry. Recently, I had an opportunity to attend the College and University Professional Association Human Resources meeting, and we were looking to see whether or not other universities were further ahead, and I was just looking for something to steal or to use if someone else had done the work, and found that we were at probably the forefront of development. We're as far along as anyone and further ahead than some others. We're of a size that we've been able to make some of those decisions. We have a task force of human resources directors, union members, and other stakeholders on the campuses that are working on developing these guidelines so that we will have that reasonable methodology documented. And then we must track, and this is the other place where the wrinkle came in. There are 3 definitions here, and Amy, we'll just go to the next slide, please. There are 3 definitions of measurement periods. As I said, it would have been lovely if the federal law and the state law had coincided, but of course they don't. And so what we must do is we must start out with what is called an initial measurement period, and we must track all employees, not just benefit eligible employees, but all employees. We have selected January through June of 2014, and during that time period, you determine if employees meet the eligibility standard for the ACA, the 30-hour requirement. If they do, then in the following 6-month period, which is called a stability period, we've selected July through December, you must offer them benefits. And then there's another concurrent measurement period that begins at that same time as the new stability period. So you're always measuring in 6-month increments for every employee what their hourly status is relative to the ACA and offering benefits. So interestingly enough, Montana law, we take a look at and typically offer benefits concurrently. With the federal law, there's a lag. So you may have a situation where you have a contract, staff might be working for a January through June period, and they're at the 30-hour threshold or above. And then July through December, that's going to be summer term, and they may drop below even 20 hours. As long as they're still our employee, they're receiving benefits. So for the first time, we may have some really odd results where it looks like people aren't working sufficient hours to garner benefits, but they are due them under the ACA. Or they may actually be working enough hours, but because in a prior measurement period they did not have enough hours accrued to qualify them for benefits, they may have to wait until they accrue them. So this is going to be a real task, and we are working on doing that at the campus level. So what are our penalties? So here's the other part, play or we can pay. And so if you fail to meet these requirements of the Affordable Care Act, or if employers just choose not to offer coverage at all, then there is a payment penalty, and that is for failure to offer coverage. It's a penalty of $2,000 for every employee. We get to subtract out 30. I'm not sure why we have to subtract out 30 or allowed to, but we can. And that's about $16 million for the system would be the penalty if we don't offer to 95% of eligible employees. If we don't offer a minimum value or affordable plan, then the penalty goes up to $3,000 for every employee who goes out and purchases coverage under the federal exchange, or the amount of the penalty if we have not offered it to 95% of our employees. That calculation is also done, and whichever is less of those two is what's applied to us. Under the ACA, really, the impacts to future benefits. Benefits are becoming more standardized for all employees. That's what the goal of the ACA is largely in the insurance reform aspect, is to create a basis where we all, as citizens, receive virtually a core of package of benefits that are very much like others. But our ability as managers of benefits programs to impact behavior through benefit plan design is becoming more limited. Now, these are good things, but they are also behavioral impacts. So we no longer have lifetime limits. That means that it's hard for me to negotiate with a hospital who wants to charge $5 million for a transplant. There's no limitation anymore. There is an elimination of pre-existing condition exclusions, which I think is a great reform under ACA. We are not all genetically born under the best aspects of the genetic lottery. We don't win it. And so, but that means that we also have to make sure that we don't have people just come into the plan, use it, and then leave and not pay on an ongoing basis. And we have restrictions on dollar and service limits, again, challenges for working with providers in limiting costs. So wellness programs are the string we have left to play on. Wellness programs are really becoming critical to employer benefit plans. And what we are looking at are some changes over the next 2 years. You may be familiar with our health screening or well-check processes that we do for employees. What we offer to every adult on the plan twice a year free is the ability to go and have biometric and a pretty comprehensive panel of laboratory results run. They may also answer a health and lifestyle questionnaire, and then we give them information to share with their physician about their personal health. What we're trying to do is keep them mindful of their personal health and give them a tool to have the dialogue with their physicians. So we are looking at really encouraging that. About a third of our folks use that currently. I would like to see that upwards of 75 to 80%, because that's a key piece of information for people to manage their health. We want to keep it in front of them. Eliminating the traditional plan, I've mentioned we offer 2 types of plan designs. The traditional plan is offered currently through one vendor, and of our 18,000 members, we have about 1,000 individuals on this plan. So what has happened over time, it's a very old plan design, and our provider network has shrunk so that it is not as robust as that folks can get on the managed care plan. The premiums have gone up, and the benefits are not as rich as on the managed care plan. So we are really kind of at a crossroads where we're offering a plan that is not as valuable to our members, but it's higher cost. And so we are working with our advisory council currently, and we are leaning toward likely eliminating that traditional plan as of July 1. And then we are looking at, in fiscal year 2016, taking our managed care plan offering, which would continue to be offered by multiple vendors, and tying enhanced benefits to participation in wellness programs by creating a 2-tier system, if you will. And so folks our plan is called Choices, and we think that that's important because we would create this double tier, and those who choose to actively participate in enhancing and maintaining their personal health and their wellness would be given better benefits at lower costs. And so that's research has shown that active participation in appropriate wellness efforts can actually reduce costs. And that's what we're going to have to do, is do something on an individual basis so that we can control our own health care spend to the extent possible. We would still offer a standard program tier, but we would likely not have as generous of benefits, and it would cost more for those who choose not to participate in wellness. Again, we call it Choices. The Montana University System Employee Plan is also in conversations right now to participate with the state employee clinic that's open in Helena. And we've had a great meeting with the vendor who operates that clinic in Helena. We are structured quite a bit different than the state plan, but our structure is more common to the way that they normally work with employer plans, we understand. And so they're actively working with us. We're working on transferring data, getting things set up so that we can actually have folks come in. I was hoping for a December start. They suggested a March start. And the reason is it's very complex for them to get eligibility set up correctly so that people can enroll and the system works correctly. And they want to make sure they get it right. So we're continuing to make sure that they work with us and that we facilitate that so that we can throw that clinic open to our folks. All right, that's kind of a discussion of the healthcare section, and I think I may also at this time then also have some brief comments about the pension plans and where we're headed there, and then perhaps we can do questions. All right, today I wanted to have a discussion of our current programs, our retirement programs operated by the Montana University System, and talk a little bit about the future policy direction. The existing plans within the Montana University System, and just very briefly for those who may not be familiar with the various retirement options. The university system itself operates two portions of a retirement plan, and as far as the overall retirement plan options available to Montana University System employees, they consist of two defined benefit plans as well as our defined contribution plan. So I don't have a slide, but I just mentioned that the Montana Public Employee Retirement System, a number of our employees within the university system participate in that defined benefit plan. The teachers' retirement system, there are other employees within the system who are members of that plan. And then currently, we operate a defined contribution retirement and savings plan called the Montana University System Retirement Plan, MUS-RP. Now, you may have known that as the vernacular of the optional retirement plan, or the ORP, but it has not been optional for a number of years, over a decade. So we finally changed the name in the legislature. So I know we'll use ORP, but it's no longer optional. So it seemed time to make the correct name change. It is authorized under Internal Revenue Code Section 401A. So I'm a numbers person, so I do refer to it as the 401A plan. That's the mandatory plan that's offered through TIA-CREF to our instructional staff. And TIA-CREF is the exclusive vendor and investment manager for that plan. They offer only TIA-CREF funds for investment. It is mandatory for faculty, new faculty. It was the faculty must go into that, I believe, as of the early 1990s is when we made that change. We have about $435 million in assets in that plan. Now, Board of Regents policy does establish that TIA-CREF is the exclusive vendor for the MUS-RP. In conjunction with the mandatory plan for instructional staff, the defined contribution plan, we also have a savings plan, which is known as the Montana University System Voluntary Savings Plan. It is authorized under Internal Revenue Code Section 403B. So you'll hear those mentioned as the 403B plans. We have 4 vendors there, ING, MetLife, TIA-CREF, and VALIC. What these are voluntary tax advantage savings plans. So you can defer income into these plans and invest it on a tax advantage basis. We have about $150 million in assets in those plans. It's similar for those who may be familiar. The state of Montana also offers the 457, Internal Revenue Code 457, voluntary savings plan. It is another plan. University system employees can participate in that one as well. So that's kind of a little known fact that you can participate in a 403B and a 457 plan and defer income. It's an advantage for us. We are required by law, by state procurement law, to go to bid for these 4 vendors. So this started a conversation, which was we had never bid out the 401A, the MUSRP. And so I think that it behooves us to take a look at, we do have to fulfill our fiduciary responsibility with respect to that plan. No reflection on the vendor or the services offered currently, it's just good practice periodically. So what we started were a series of conversations about how we fulfill that fiduciary responsibility and what the impact would be if we had a larger asset base. As you could see, we're somewhere around $600 million in assets to bid out as opposed to something less than $150 million worth of assets. And the market looks at that very differently. So we're looking at and working with Wilshire Consulting is our pension consulting firm, who have done some work for us and advised us that they believe that that greater asset base really does have potential for competitive administrative fees. We are looking at the potential for going to a single record keeper. And what that would be a vendor where the employees could see all of their account information kept in one place. Now, we are also considering what's called an open architecture fund lineup structure to expand access to better performing funds. As I mentioned, TIA-CREF, our 401A plan, our MUSRP, exclusively offers TIA-CREF funds. And that's fine to some extent, but there is interest in other fund lineups, and being able to select best in class is a best practice within the industry. If we created what's called an open architecture platform, we could offer VALIC funds, we could offer Vanguard, we could offer TIA-CREF, we could offer a variety of best performing funds on this platform in order for our employees to utilize that in their investment choices. We are also looking at providing enhanced decision-making tools and a plan structure that optimizes participant returns. So what's happened over time is the way these have developed, or they were kind of any willing provider type of arrangements. So an investment manager would come to a university system and say, I'll offer coverage for your employees, and then we had an expansion of fund lineups. For investment purposes, research has shown that people suffer from analysis paralysis, and they either don't participate or they don't make investment choices and manage their funds if they have too many options. And so part of what we're looking at is what is the optimal level of plan offering and the tools to help our folks participate at the greatest level and do their best to achieve retirement planning success. We're also looking at adding a Roth IRA option potentially and a brokerage window with some pretty comprehensive sideboards so that people who are sophisticated investors could work to configure their portfolio more fully. All right.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. Are there questions or comments from members of the board? Regent Buchanan.
Connie, thank you. You have a very broad spectrum of responsibilities and a huge base of people that are dependent on great decisions, and your thoroughness and thoughtfulness is aware. And it struck me your very first slide, I think it was $72 million that we put into benefits, representing 8,100 current employees. And quick math, that's about $9,000 in benefits per employees. And we often hear about the challenges that we have in meeting many needs of folks. But from my perspective and as a citizen of the state, it sure feels like we're doing well in many areas, particularly the health plan, in a relative basis to provide the benefits to keep a healthy workforce. And I'm very grateful for that. And I think many employees, although we very rarely get visited by folks here to say thank you for what we do, I'd like to extend an appreciation to you and to OCHI for the hard work on behalf of our employees in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Regent Buchanan.
Regent Robinson.
Yes, thank you, Connie, for the report. This is very helpful. I was interested in your analysis of the impact of the Affordable Care Act and how we're developing a strategy to respond. I was curious, it sounds like one of the issues was tracking the hourly rate, or how many hours an employee is working. I'm curious, I know this is in progress right now because it has to take effect here pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we at with developing that system in order to track those hours if we haven't done that in the past?
Thank you, Regent Robinson. We have kind of two aspects to that. One is the policy aspect, the definitional. So we've been hoping that the federal government would provide some guidance to us so that we could have a standard measurement to apply to workloads, and we describe that as a multiplier. That hasn't been forthcoming. So we do have this work group who are working under the current federal guidelines, which are to provide a reasonable definition. And so we are quite far along. We will have that done here by December and be able to have something that we're applying across the campuses. I think it's been fair to say it's a good conversation for campuses because they've had an opportunity to learn about the differences in mission and the business processes that differ among campuses and then find some commonality. That's one aspect is a policy. The other side is the technical aspect. Because there's no federal guidelines currently, there really aren't IT solutions to do this. And so we currently have a request for information going out to see what's in the market as far as IT solutions to see what might be out there. But we're also concurrently planning for the opportunity to build an interim solution on each campus, but we have to link it across the entire system for the first time. So that's quite a conversation. You're an employee of the system now. You are not an employee of the campus as far as the federal government is concerned. So we must link those, and we're looking at potential to build our own system. So we will have the ability starting January 1 to track that.
Thank you. Further questions or comments from members of the board? Mr. Makwa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have two comments, Connie. And one, I'd like to echo Regent Buchanan's comment. You are a very busy person.
Thank you.
And the second, just to comment on the proposal that you mentioned to bid out the 401A plan and to look at other vendors. And I just would encourage that to occur. Some simple analysis that faculty on our campus have conducted indicate that the TIA-CREF is quite expensive. Their administrative costs seem to be higher than many other options. And so we are encouraged to hear that you're looking into that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, we did. When we started these conversations, it's interesting the competition in the market. And one of our vendors did come forward. Actually, TIA-CREF reconfigured our 401A plan to combine all campuses into one account, and that made us one of their top 200 accounts, and just by doing that, the fee structure dropped. So we know if they came forward voluntarily, that there's probably more room under a bid, and so it's time to look.
Thank you. Regent Krause.
Yes, thank you. Could you tell me what that voluntary participation in employee wellness might look like?
Regent Krause, yes, we're starting discussions here about creating the two-tiered system, and then we would offer an enhanced benefit for folks who chose to participate in the wellness programs. So one aspect of that would be having the information and maintaining information about your own health. So you would have to participate in a well check. And then we are working with a subgroup of the Advisory Council, the Inter-Unit Benefits Committee, as well as health and human performance folks on the campuses and a number of interested stakeholders that work in this area. We are in the business of research and education. And so what we are doing is looking at applying the best research and knowledge about what kind of behavioral change can we affect in human beings effectively by encouraging people to do appropriate things for their health. So that's That may include components of physical exercise, that may include education and awareness components. Our goal is really to provide the supports and the infrastructure for people to maintain their existing health status. If everyone did that, we would be happy and I could almost go home, or to enhance it.
It just occurs to me that we, in a university system wide, we have many people who are differently abled and maybe healthy or not healthy, or, and I suddenly envision giant squares of, the field house full of MSU employees in the morning, all working at bouncing up and down at the same time. And so I'm wondering how we do that with individuals who may or may not be differently abled,
Regent Krause, the response to that is kind of two-tiered. One is the Affordable Care Act contains provisions that contemplate some of those protections. So there are participatory programs and there are outcome-based programs. And employers, you will read about implementation of outcome-based programs which say things like you must meet a blood pressure level of X or a cholesterol level of Y in order to be eligible for a tier of benefits. We are not looking at that. And fundamentally, the reason for that is probably that may be some personal belief, but I've seen enough healthcare. We are not all lucky in the genetic lottery. And so instead what we're trying to do is enable people to do within their own abilities the best that they can. So that's a participatory guideline. And the Affordable Care Act requires us to provide accommodations to individuals in order to recognize their individual circumstances. So this is a very individual-based effort. It can't be one size fits all. Those will fail. We've got to provide the tools so that people can select from a menu to find out what works for them. And honestly, it's going to have to come back to them to make the choice and design the program that works for them. Our job is to provide the tools and the infrastructure and support so that they can do that and be successful.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just quickly before I turn it over to the Commissioner, in the interest of time, I just have a remark and then I'll turn it to the Commissioner, and then we'll maybe we can email questions and get a thread going if there's continued questions that board members have, because this is such an important conversation. And I just want to reiterate my appreciation to you for the great work that you've done on this, and I think for getting out in front, as well as Mick Robinson and the time that you've spent. Additionally, I'd like to thank Kevin McCrae, I think, who's really had to be out front as we consider what this might mean for the folks who work on our campuses. And I think that you've really had to deal with a lot as all of this rolls out, and as you continue to work with our partners in MEMFT on the collective bargaining agreements. I want to thank you for your work on that in that regard. And so we look forward to, as a board, these continued conversations and to continued partnerships with MEMFT and with our faculty and staff who are union members across the state as they consider just exactly what this means for them. So thank you for the time. Commissioner Christian? All right. Thank you very much. All right. At this time now, we'll move on to our two-year education and community colleges committee. And for that conversation, Regent Krause. Actually, before that, I'm sorry, we have the K-20 data linkage piece with Deputy Commissioner Tyler Trevor.
Madam Chair, members of the board, it's my privilege to introduce Madeline Quinlan. She's the Chief of Staff for the Office of Public Instruction and a colleague of ours in the development of our K-20 database. She's here to give you an update on some progress and some exciting news related to this project.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the Board of Regents, and a special hello to the chairwoman of the board. I'm Madeline Quinlan, Chief of Staff at the Office of Public Instruction. I want to give you an update on a collaborative project between the Office of Public Instruction and both the Commissioner's Office of Higher Education and the campuses. We have secured a grant from the U.S. Department of Education, a $3.9 million grant, 3-year grant for us to work together to create K-20 data linkages. The purpose of the grant is to create partnerships between K-12 and post-secondary and use electronic student transcripts as a vehicle for both providing a service to students and families, but also to be able to use that as a data collection tool so that we can link data between high schools and then post-secondary for students who enroll in the Montana University system. Our project has 3 goals, and I just wanted to review those goals for you and then speak briefly about the accomplishments that we have on this project so far. So our first goal is to establish the data linkages between K-12 and post-secondary by creating an electronic student transcript repository. So what we'll do is students in the process of working with their school districts to complete college applications will generate the student transcript, and that will then be submitted to the Office of Public Instruction. We will then receive the data on the student course-taking patterns, and then as that student moves into the university system, we will be able to ultimately link their college success with their high school preparation. So what's really exciting about this is that we're able to provide a benefit to students and their families, and also to the campuses, because the campuses will now have a standardized student transcript to work with. But that benefit will also be a way of generating data for both K-12 and for higher education. Our second goal under this project is to create an interagency data governance council. And that council includes representatives from the Montana Office of Public Instruction, the university system, and Montana high schools. And from higher education, we have representation that includes Tyler Trevor from the Commissioner's Office, Don Russell from the University of Montana campus, Christine Fastnow from MSU Bozeman, and Sherry Johannes from MSU Billings. So they've all been really great contributors to the council. And the council takes up policy questions and also communication questions about to improve our understanding about how things work at both the K-12 level and the higher education level, and then how we can coordinate our work to exchange data and to benefit from that, the access to that data. The third project goal for this project is that we'll be implementing what we call business intelligence tools and web reporting tools for users of K-20 data. The Office of Public Instruction recently completed our K-12 education data warehouse, which we call GEMS, and we'll be able to build on that and expand our functionality and our reporting tools to then also provide data about, again, high school and its linkage to post-secondary, and how high school preparation or what the courses students take in high school prepare them for higher education. In terms of what the project itself will accomplish, we have 2 main functions. One is we're creating these electronic student transcripts, and again, that information will become available to us at the Office of Public Instruction, plus it will make the transcript available for the college application process. And then another main function of this grant is to improve the exchange of data between our public school districts and the Office of Public Instruction. We certainly have area for improvement for improving those mechanisms. It's fairly burdensome on our public school districts right now, the amount of data and the mechanisms and the processes that they have to go through to submit data to OPI. And so we're hoping with funding under this grant that we'll be able to improve that. So I just wanted to speak briefly to the accomplishments that we have so far under this project. First is that we have defined the required elements of a standard high school transcript. The concept existed already in Board of Public Education rule, but we've been more specific about what those data elements are. And the board adopted those, the Board of Public Education adopted those in May of this year. We've also taken the high school follow-up report, which has been in the past or traditionally produced by the Commissioner's Office, and it's now being produced by OPI. So that high school follow-up report provides information on the enrollment rates of high school students, both their enrollment rate in college and the remediation rates for math and writing. And we expect to have those reports posted publicly or available on the web by mid-January, and it will include data from 2011, 12, and 13. We've also developed a set of research questions. If I could ask you to go back, I'm still on the previous slide. We've developed a set of research questions, and this again was a collaboration between higher ed and K-12 of what do we want to be able to learn from this data. So the group has developed a set of research questions. We've also signed a contract with the National Student Clearinghouse to be able to receive data and submit files up to 8 times a year on the enrollment status of Montana high school graduates and see what post-secondary institutions they have entered and then their college continuation rates. And so we're able to secure information on both 2-year and 4-year campuses, public and private enrollments, and when those enrollments start and end. We're also able to see the sequence that a student follows. So if they've started in 2-year colleges and moved to 4-year colleges, that's information that we'll be able to gather from the National Student Clearinghouse. We're also able to provide each high school in Montana with what's called a student tracker for high school. And so it provides high schools with their own specific information about where their students are going to college and whether they're continuing through college once they enroll. The next piece that we have going is that we are currently negotiating a contract with IBM, who is our successful vendor in terms of the student transcript. We're in the process of negotiating a contract which we hope to have signed by early December, and that is for the transcripting service and also the improved process for exchanging data with school districts. IBM will build the electronic student transcript, but another player in on this contract is an entity called ConnectEDU. And ConnectEDU is a technology company that is focused on education and career needs of students. And so there are career planning tools that will also be available through this product, and we'll be able to link both the transcript to those career planning tools. So we think there's a number of possibilities with that product. We've also created what we call a Data Transport Advisory Council. So this is the group that will focus on improving ways of exchanging data between K-12 and higher ed. And we have representation from more than 45 school districts on this council. We also have one representative from the University of Montana that we're pleased to have. And the council then will again, improve those data exchanges, which will help build our longitudinal data system. So the group so far has done things like review our request for proposal that we put out for soliciting those high school transcript services, and they've been able to give us feedback, and we produce a quarterly report for that group to review and comment on. In terms of timelines, we are, again, we've got the high school transcript approved by the Board of Public Ed. We're about to sign the contract for both the transcript and the transport areas. The transcript should be available during the 2014-15 school year. So students will be able to apply for college in the 2014-15 school year. They'll have that tool available to them. And we're also planning with the grant that we will have the improvements well in place for exchanging the data by the beginning of 2014-15 school year. The next thing I wanted to address, and if you'll go one more slide, I'd like to invite you all to OPI's Assessment and Data Conference, which will happen in the middle of January in Helena. you should have an active link there that you can click through to look at the nature of the conference, but it's certainly, its focus is on career and college ready and the data and the assessment tools to really see how well we're doing in that regard. So I think there will be a number of workshops and speakers of interest, so I encourage you to take a look at what's available there. And so just to summarize, I think this project represents one more way that we're building really good relationships, working relationships between K-12 and higher ed, and all of it's focused on increasing student achievement. So thank you for the time, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Quinlan, and thank you, Tyler, Mr. Trevor, for your great work on this as well. Certainly not an easy task, but this data is going to be invaluable to us. One of my questions is in regards to the transcript that was approved by the Board of Public Education, what constitutes that? As you look at those transcripts, then will you be able to delineate the specific level and type of mathematics that each student had? And is that so that we can look without failure of being in error that student A had math A, B, and C, and that math A, B, and C's equivalent we could compare to someone across the state?
Madam Chair, yes. The high school transcript will have that level of detail. It will have the student course taking, the credits earned, and the grade that they receive for the class. And we are, this year, for the first time, collecting high school courses from school districts with a new Common Core. Well, it's not to be confused with it's a Common Course code that has been developed by the National Center for Education Statistics. We basically took that, made some minor adjustments for Montana. And so we will have, through that Common Course coding, we will have comparable data across school districts. So by looking at the code here, and if it's equivalent to one that we see in another school district, we know that overall the content of that course is equivalent between those two school districts.
Excellent. I think that will be invaluable to us as we move forward our math conversation that we're having at this level, of course, with you folks as well at the table. And so I appreciate that. It's exciting to see what's happening out there, and I think it's going to provide us very rich and meaningful data. For further questions or comments from members of the board, Regent Rogala.
Madeline, do you know how many other states do the electronic transcript transfer?
Madam Chair, Representative Rogala, or I'm sorry, Regent Rogala, I don't. We could get that information, but I don't know the number offhand.
Regent Albrecht.
Madam Chair, Ms. Quinlan, thank you for your work. Congratulations on the grant. How do you ensure that students' privacy rights are protected in this process?
Great. Thank you, and I anticipated that question coming up. The data about the student well, let me just say that the Office of Public Instruction and the data warehouse that we've already built, we've built all of the system around a set of policies that comply with the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act. And we have a pretty comprehensive student confidentiality policy at the Office of Public Instruction that we follow, and we train all of our staff on that policy. The transcript will be generated from the school district at the request of the student. It will come to OPI and be held in a repository there and will be subject to our privacy protections. And then it moves from OPI to this national transcripting product. So at every step in the process, the contract that we're signing with IBM, I mean, we've got those securities built into it, and we're meeting what we would consider data privacy standards. So.
Thank you.
And I guess I would also say in terms of display of data, the policy that we follow at OPI when we're displaying data about school districts, because we're never displaying data about individual students, is that we mask data whenever the group is smaller than 5 students.
Thank you, Regent Robinson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, and congratulations on the grant and especially implementing this. As always, with any of the federal grants that we get, and we discussed this a little bit yesterday, with this advisory council that you have in place, has there been discussion about how this will be sustainable after the 3 years? What's the plan for that?
Madam Chair and Regent Robinson, we are working on that. We expect to be taking a request to the legislature, among other efforts that we're doing to sustain the project, because we have a need to both sustain the data warehouse that we have at the Office of Public Instruction, plus the electronic student transcripting service. So I'm going to hesitate to kind of run off numbers because I don't know if they're still current. But yeah, we would be looking to the legislature to some support here for maintaining these systems. And what will really be important here is that there is enough benefit and enough use of the systems that the people who are using it will be stepping forward to advocate for those resources to be allocated.
I'm glad you're looking at it that way, and that's the follow-up question that I have is, so this is a focus on certainly partnership between OPI and higher ed, and so it's focused on high school transcripts, is that correct?
That's correct.
Is there the opportunity to expand it so that it also works not only with the high schools and the higher education system, but also within the K through 12 system? I'm curious if there's something that exists. I haven't seen it as a parent, having 3 kids in the public school system that have moved through the system to be able to share that data other than faxing a transcript from school to school. So is that something that's being considered as well?
Madam Chair and Regent Robinson, we are, as part of this project, we are not moving in that direction. We have had discussions at the Office of Public Instruction about collecting student rosters relative to the other data that we collect from school districts about what their course offerings are. But we don't have a plan that we're implementing to do what you're asking about.
It just might be something for the council to consider. I would recommend that. If it's to scale, it certainly is more attractive. And if you've done the system and prepared the system once, it seems like if it can be applied in other avenues, it seems like it would be more cost effective that way. Something else to consider, and I know it might come up, is with our partners with the tribal colleges as well. It might be something to encourage participation there, because it would be a benefit to help with their transfers as well.
Right, and we've actually briefly had those conversations.
Further questions or comments? Thank you very much. We appreciate your time and the great report and the great work that you're doing on behalf of our students. Thank you too, once again, Mr. Trevor. At this point in our agenda, we will move on to the Tier Education and Community Colleges Committee, and for that, I'll turn it over to Regent Kraus.
Thank you. I'm going to somewhat turn it over to Dr. Seck, and also to, it is our privilege to welcome Judy Hyman, the State Advisor from the Lumina Foundation as well. And I know they will be succinct.
Thank you, Chairman Kraus. It's my pleasure this afternoon, or this morning, to introduce Judy Hyman, who is our policy advisor on behalf of the Lumina Foundation for the College Now initiative, which has existed in Montana now for the past 4 years. So Judy flew in from Sacramento and is here today to share some thoughts on behalf of the foundation.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, board members, Commissioner. As John mentioned, I'm Judy Hyman, and I've had the great privilege to serve as Montana's State Advisor for the Lumina Grant since 2008. By way of background, In my other life, I work on higher education issues for California's nonpartisan legislative analyst, and prior to that, I served as Deputy Secretary of Education for Virginia. I'd like to very briefly, Regent Krause, review the history of College Now, especially for the newer regents who may not be as familiar with it. 5 years ago, Lumina held a meeting for about a dozen states that were interested in increasing the productivity of their higher education systems. And Commissioner Christian was a regent at the time and attended in that capacity, along with Senator Bob Hawks, then Commissioner Sheila Stearns, Dean Mary Moe, President Jane Karras, and 2 governor's advisors, Jan Lombardi and Pat Wise. After attending this meeting, the group submitted a proposal for a 1-year planning grant with a lot of help from Tyler Trevor, I understand. Your team succeeded in getting the planning grant, and based on their good work during that planning year and a strong proposal to strengthen Montana's 2-year education system, you were awarded 1 of 7 state implementation grants. All of the implementation grants were for various strategies aimed at significantly increasing the number of students earning high-quality degrees and credentials at the lowest possible cost. Lumina's big goal, which, by the way, also mirrors Montana's goal articulated by Governor Bullock earlier this year, is to increase the proportion of Americans with quality degrees and credentials to 60% by the year 2025, both to help the individual succeed and to help the nation meet our economic challenges. Lumina was looking for states that were willing to partner with them in figuring out how to do this. Your team stepped up to the plate and demonstrated a willingness to work together toward achieving this goal. As a result, Lumina awarded Montana the 2nd largest of the 7 grants, just a hair behind Texas with its population of 25 million compared to less than 1 million here at the time. Montana got that grant and set right to work on creating College Now. The agenda materials, shown up on the screen here, include a nice summary of what you accomplished in the first 3 years of the grant. Right up front, you can see College Now's goals to increase enrollment, transfer, completion, and efficiency, and to reduce the price relative to the Western state average and Montana's 4-year institutions. You've made progress on all of these goals, and I expect this progress to not only continue, but to accelerate as you continue implementing all of the strategies that you've put in motion. This agenda document describes the strategies and all of your accomplishments under each strategy. I will not go through all of them, that would take a while, but I'll highlight the core strategy, which was to transform your 2-year sector from a loose collection of institutions with different missions, different types of programs, high average tuition, and in some cases, poor articulation with the universities, into a cohesive network of comprehensive 2-year colleges embracing the full community college mission. As Dean Barry Good said to me just a few minutes ago, College Now really put 2-year education on the map in Montana. The steps you put in place to get there, including common course numbering, common general education core, consistent dual enrollment policies, and a focus on meeting the needs of adult learners, will yield benefits to students and the state for years to come. The work you've done already has resulted in 2 big votes of confidence, one from the voters of Gallatin County, who roundly approved a new mill levy to support Gallatin College's expanded mission, and another from the Federal Department of Labor, which awarded Montana $25 million to implement a statewide approach to workforce development. The impressive Montana consortium of 13 state, tribal, and community colleges will build on many of the strategies you put in place under College Now. This project has the potential to take the work you've done so far to the next level and propel you well beyond the goals that you set here. This commendable record of accomplishment raises 2 questions. How did Montana accomplish so much over the past 4 years, and where will you go from here? How did Montana accomplish so much? For one thing, you didn't start 4 years ago when you started College Now. To your credit, the Board of Regents already had set a clear direction for Montana's higher education system and had a pretty good idea of where you wanted to go, which you articulated in your student success agenda. You were strategic in applying for the Lumina grant, and you made sure that it would advance your agenda before agreeing to take it on. As far as I can tell, you haven't fallen into the trap of chasing grant money and letting a funder's agenda spread you too thin. Instead, you've gone after support that will help you get where you want to go. The funding has provided resources, expertise, an opportunity to work with other states to get you there faster and smarter, but the strategic direction is Montana's alone, starting here. I can't overstate the importance of your role as the setters and keepers of the vision and direction. Your engagement at that policy level has enabled OCHI and the institutions to stay focused on Montana's goals. Credit also goes to the broader Montana team, from the Commissioner's Office, including John Sack and his staff who have led the College Now effort, to campus and system leaders, the participation of the Governor's Office, the Office of Public Instruction, the Department of Labor and Industry, and other state offices has also been key, as has the involvement of key legislative, civic, and business leaders. And perhaps most crucially, credit goes to the educators on the campuses and in the classrooms who've put in tremendous effort behind the scenes to do the careful work of developing and implementing the new policies and programs, often with no new resources, out of their commitment to Montana's students and their absolute professionalism. Beyond the outstanding individuals involved, there just seems to be some quality about Montanans that has helped you make so much progress. It helps that you all know each other and could sit down together and talk. It helps that everyone here realizes that education is not a partisan issue, and leaders of all stripes have supported it. But more than that, it's that get-her-done spirit that I've seen here like nowhere else. It's that commitment to make Montana better that Regent Buchanan spoke so eloquently about last night. These are some of the factors I've observed, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about what else may have contributed to your progress in the last few years. As you can imagine, whatever the secret sauce is, many of us around the country would like to bottle it and take it around to other states. Looking forward, you still have many exciting challenges ahead of you in two-year education. I'll mention just two of the more significant ones. First is implementing the Department of Labor grant, a formidable task. You can help the consortium meet its potential by ensuring that the system policies which you set will support the project's strategies and encourage, or at the very least, not impede adoption of successful innovations across the state. A second major challenge before you is developing and implementing the next phase of outcome-based funding, as Tyler Trevor mentioned in the Complete College Montana presentation yesterday. I'd like to spend a few minutes on this because I think it holds promise to advance your goals, but it's very difficult to get right. There's a lot of skepticism about performance funding, some of it for good reason. There was a study presented just this week at an academic conference in St. Louis, concluding that, with some notable exceptions, performance funding hasn't been effective at increasing completions in states that have tried it, and it may even have had negative effects in some states. Most of the experience we have with performance funding is from the 1990s, when it was broadly implemented in ways that we now realize were too simplistic. Because these experiments were poorly designed, many of them either didn't work at all or worked at odds with broader state goals. For example, some of them resulted in a narrowing of institutional mission, a lowering of academic standards, restrictions on student admissions. It's important to understand and acknowledge this. With this history, it's no wonder that there's some skepticism about performance funding. States that have adopted outcome-based funding models in these last few years are working very hard to avoid the mistakes of the past. They're creating performance funding 2.0 and 3.0. Characteristics of this new approach include consulting extensively with faculty and other campus stakeholders, accounting for differences in institutional mission, protecting academic standards, rewarding students' progress along the way, not only completion, and rewarding student success and serving disadvantaged students. Several states are also working on ways to include measures of student learning in their outcome measures. The study presented this week, and virtually all of the studies that have looked at the effects of performance funding on completion, are based on the data from the old version of performance funding. So they don't necessarily apply to the way states are implementing it now. But still, they're a good reminder that if poorly designed, performance funding can backfire. Another study presented at the same conference, and this second study was based on the current efforts, pointed out that even though we have these clear lessons from the past, some states still aren't doing enough to set the programs up for success. The researchers argued that states need to do a better job of articulating the theory of action for performance funding in their states. In other words, they need to be clear about the goals, the problem performance funding is meant to address, what needs to change at the campuses for more students to succeed, and how the funding incentives will help bring about those changes. The researchers also found that some states need to do a better job of sharing information about current institutional performance and building capacity at the campuses to monitor their own performance, analyze problems, devise solutions, and evaluate those solutions. And that's where I think you come in. As the governing board for the system, you are the keepers of the vision and the principles for implementing performance funding. You are in the best position to articulate why the system is doing this and how it will help students and the state. It's also up to you to hold the implementation team accountable for following the principles you set out. At your board planning session about a year ago, you discussed a number of key principles for performance funding. At the top of the list were identifying key stakeholders, working with them to establish broad consensus on desired outcomes, and then to identify appropriate measures. I know that Deputy Commissioner Trevor and the steering committee are in the midst of working on this, as you heard yesterday, and you can help by asking the hard questions. What are you hearing from stakeholders, from educators at the campuses? What are their concerns? How are we addressing them? How are you working to build broad consensus about desired outcomes? How are you sharing information about campus performance? How are you helping to build capacity for change? These sorts of questions, as well as your efforts to articulate the broader vision, will better position performance funding in Montana to help students and the state in the ways that you envision. And will also help you avoid the unintended consequences we've seen in Performance Funding 1.0. To get back to the research, the skeptics have a point that there's no clear body of evidence supporting the belief that performance funding will have a significant effect on completions. The new models are too new to show any sustained impact on completion, but there is already clear evidence from these models that they've brought about positive changes on campuses. They've changed the conversation from student access to student access and success. They've led to increased funding and greater awareness of state priorities and institutional performance. They've sparked greater use of data in institutional decision-making. And they've led to changes in academic and student service programs that are intended to improve student outcomes. These intermediate changes can and should contribute to better longer-term outcomes. Performance funding is no silver bullet, but if done well, it can be one part of your overall strategy to improve student learning and degree completion by aligning some of your resources with those objectives. So in closing, I would just like to reiterate my appreciation for the opportunity to work with Montana for these last 4 years. When I compare notes with others around the country, what really does stand out is that get-or-done spirit, your willingness to roll up your sleeves and figure out how to make things work. That's made it a genuine pleasure to work with you, and I look forward to continuing to support your way in any way that I can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and this is, it's very valuable to have you here today, and so I think we should ask some questions. Mr. Christian.
If I could, Chairman Kraus, thank you. It's hard to imagine in so many ways we've been 5 years now in this partnership, but other times I look at it and I think we've accomplished an incredible amount in the last 5 years, and we've done so with the great work of our leadership, John Seck and others, but we've gotten there certainly through the help of Lumina, and so please extend our appreciation to the Lumina Foundation. And as John said in a meeting a while ago, we won the lottery when Lumina gave us you, and Judy, we really thank you for all that you've done for us. You really helped bind this effort together and communicate our message to Lumina and theirs to us, and certainly served us extremely well, so thank you. It's been a wonderful partnership for Montana. We have come an incredible long ways. Thank you.
Yes. Questions? Any questions or comments? I guess I wanted to just reiterate this idea that you said something like performance funding is, well, we're not sure about the more or less graduation rates, completion rates, student access and success. That's a new emphasis of student success, institutional performance, increased funding, and a focus on improving student outcomes institutional-wide. Just wanted to reiterate that. I think that is a huge success already, and thank you for focusing on that. When we look at the first page, we see 3% and some other things, but there are some great outcomes for that future, and I might have John Seck talk about just those 4 measurements for a minute, if I could. John?
Mr. Chair, absolutely, and I would like to just, first of all, take the moment to echo Commissioner Christian's thanks to the Lumina Foundation and to Judy Hyman. She has been absolutely magnificent and has been a mentor to me and a real guiding light. So thank you, Judy, for your great work. And also have to recognize the incredible work of the 2-year presidents and CEOs and deans, as well as this board, the presidents, chancellors, and of course, the commissioner and former commissioner and Deputy Commissioner Moe for their great work on this. As Judy mentioned, we worked very hard with the Lumina Foundation, working on transforming the system in the state, focusing on enrollment growth, transfer, completion, and efficiency. And our early returns after 3 years are showing, of course, we know we've had great growth in enrollment, but our completions at among the 2-year colleges has increased 22%, which was highlighted nationally in July as some of the highest growth among all colleges and states in the country. And our efficiency, the decrease in expenditures per completion, has decreased 16%. So while we've grown, we've increased our completions. The cost of providing that per completion has decreased, which is a good thing.
And I think there is no question that while we might have been on the path, we would not have done this without Lumina. This was, and some of the, I see a little corner over there with Todd and John and Clay. And there's a few other people, the last governor and Mary Moe, you mentioned, the deputy commissioner, and some of the other people that set our feet on this path, and we're really kind of the beneficiaries of that. So thank you very much. On the transfer, I just point out that 3% isn't much, but that's really a pipeline issue. And John, could you address that for just a minute?
Absolutely, Chairman Kraus. If you go back to, say, 2005, we only had 3 public comprehensive community colleges or comprehensive 2-year colleges in Montana, Flathead, Miles, and Dawson. So since 2005, we've moved the dial to adding 9, with a lot of work taking place and planning with the Bitterroot College in Hamilton. So we're expanding those transfer programs. We have people in the pipeline. We're working on the tuning effort right now. So we expect those numbers, Chairman Kraus, to grow significantly over the next 5 years.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Kraus. Judy, thank you for the presentation, and the numbers are quite encouraging, and especially when you keep in mind that the numbers represent students and the way that we're improving their opportunities and their accomplishments. But I also want to thank you for your honesty and transparency. As a member of the performance-based funding task force in the state, I have to say that my email has been inundated as of late with links to the papers that you mentioned in terms of some negative output or negative observations from results of some of the past performance-based funding efforts by other states. And so I appreciate you mentioning that, and I would also encourage you as a representative of Lumina to provide us as much information as you can as some of the newer models are developed the more evidence that we can provide to indicate that these types of successes, I think the better our opportunity will be to come up with something that's well accepted by the stakeholders.
Absolutely. And I think it is important to look at the research that's coming out. It's important to evaluate it and understand what it says. That particular study actually showed that in a number of states there were positive effects, and in a similar number there were negative, and in many more there were no discernible effects. So, and that was with the old model. But one of the things you might consider as part of your work with the faculty is to bring out some of the researchers. Much of the what I see as really good academic research on this is being done at the Community College Research Center in New York. It's very likely you could get one of those researchers to come out and help give you a survey of what we know so far.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Chairman
Welcome
Krause.
back.
Thank you. We just, on behalf of the governor, would like to thank you for all the work you've done for the state of Montana and helping those graduation rates. Appreciate it.
Any other questions? You know, the deputy mayor and me says, it occurs to me you could do your work anywhere, and anytime you'd like to, we'll roll out the red carpet if you want to move to Bozeman. I mean, they'd love to have your kind of talent here. So thank you very much for coming back and
Thank you.
your participation. What's next, Dr. Stack?
Chairman Krause, I'm going to ask the next two presentations to work really hard to shore up their presentations so they're very short. Chancellor Grosset, Ms. Knoll, and the rest of the MSU Billings folks. And I will, at this point, turn it over to Chancellor Grosset to introduce it.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. I'll introduce Annie Knoll on my right from Strategies 360, and Dean Marcia Riley, who's the Dean of City College, for this presentation. And it's about marketing. Interestingly, I have an issue of the Billings Gazette here, which has 2 articles on the kinds of programs that we offer in our 2-year campuses. One is about elevating the visibility of those programs, and one is about increasing the popularity of those programs. It's dated January 9th, 1972. And I mention that because when we, in 1994, when we changed, when we restructured the university system and changed the names of our VOTEC centers to colleges of technology, we really didn't do much marketing around those name changes and the differing roles. And so one of the things that the external funding we've received from Lumina has allowed us to do is to be directed, and but to experiment a little bit along the way. And so when Deputy Commissioner Seck came to us at MSU Billings and asked us to be a part of a pilot study to market the name changes and function changes of our 2-year campuses, we were anxious to be a part of that and to see what we could do to perhaps create a kind of a template for the university system. And so I'll turn it over to Annie Knoll to kind of describe the project, and then we'll talk a little bit about the results.
And is there a clicker for the PowerPoint? Oh, okay. Just give a sign. Okay, great. Madam Chair, members of the Board of Regents, thank you for having us today. As you know, we conducted a brand campaign in order to learn best practices for implementing a statewide 2-year education brand efficiently and effectively. Together with MSUB, City College, and the Commissioner's Office, this campaign was launched June 2010 and was completed October 31st. The campaign was based on market research that we carried out almost 2 years ago in 2012. So we created a campaign concept that leveraged the question, "What's your plan?" and presented City College at MSUB as the answer. This campaign featured 8 portraits of success from City College, including alumni, current students, and faculty for whom two-year education was part of their plan. By featuring these success stories that reflect the same biographies as our prospective students, we show that two-year education is community-driven, relevant, and inclusive. Here's a screenshot of the campaign website that provided additional information on applying career opportunities and financial aid. We also had a request for more information page here to generate prospective student leads for City College. The campaign also relied on Facebook promoted posts, online advertising, and traditional advertising. Here you can see some examples of our online advertising, where we were able to show that City College is affordable, has small class sizes, is approachable, focused, and community-oriented. Those were all traits that our market research demonstrated prospective students wanted to know about the two-year colleges in Montana in order to apply. And here are some examples of our traditional advertising. And by using Facebook, we created a platform for people to engage with campaign content by sharing, commenting on, and liking our posts. We saw rich and robust engagement with prospective students and community members here. As of today, City College received over 250 requests for more information through the campaign. This is 250 new prospective student leads generated in a short 5-month period. The campaign advertising investment proved to have a direct effect on the rate of prospective students requesting more information from City College. Using social media in tandem with online advertising proved to be effective for engaging our target prospective student audiences that included adult learners, veterans, and Native Americans. If you invest in a strategic, cohesive marketing campaign, it will make an impact. A strategic campaign can help you reach demographics that you aren't reaching yet, help you fill programs that have capacity, control the message about your college, increase levels of brand recognition and positive sentiments about your college, and solve problems such as student class identity issues, fundraising, partnerships, and community relations. The campaign must be strategic, cohesive, and responsive. And then here's some examples of what a statewide two-year brand campaign would look like. We use the portraits from the City College campaign with the logos and from all of the two-year colleges that were renamed. So. Now is the time for implementing a statewide two-year education brand campaign. With the increased public awareness of Montana's two-year colleges through the College Now rebranding effort and increases in funding for two-year colleges, such as legislative funding for the new Missoula College building, the landslide win for the Gallatin College two-year education mill levy, and sweeping improvements that will be put in place through the TACT grant. Now is the time to put in place this two-year education brand campaign to reach prospective students in Montana who are asking the question, "What's my plan?" and keep the momentum going. And I also want to just note that tactics developed through this campaign were also used in the campaign for the Gallatin College two-year education mill levy.
Now I'd ask Dean Marcia Riley to talk about her involvement and
Chairman Kraus, Regents, Commissioner. I just have 4 points that I would briefly like to talk about related to What's Your Plan. First is the recognition and hard work of a team that met weekly with Strategies 360. So I wanted to recognize our Director of Operations, Stacy Williamson, Rita Kratke, Director of Student Services, Sherry Johannes, our Registrar, Erin Klingen-Smith, our University Relations. What happened in those weekly meetings is that Strategies 360, as consultants, took a look at our web presence because this was going to be a web campaign. Look at the web presence of City College, and really what they found out was that it was really darn hard to find City College. And so through a lot of push and pull, and a group that worked really hard weekly to get this campaign launched, we really created a new way to navigate through that, and you'll see now that City College has its own URL, which was really helpful in the success of making the online media able to find City College. Next, I would mention that the faculty has worked for many years with business and industry, and that the faculty have program advisory committees that advise their curriculum. But also, City College has an advisory board that is what we call our National Advisory Board, and their goal is to provide guidance to myself and to the Chancellor on issues of City College. Well, we showed at our October meeting, we showed that then results of What's Your Plan, and a member of the National Advisory Board who's been on the committee for several years said, this is exactly what we've been asking you to do. This is what we wanted you to do, is promote City College. So thank you for doing that. Then, of course, there's the stars, the celebrities of What's Your Plan, our current students, our graduates, alumni, our faculty. And those particular folks, I want to really thank them because they graciously let us use their image wherever we wanted to. And while they promoted What's Your Plan to their Facebook friends, we really used them to promote to a broader audience. And I'm reminded yesterday, President Engstrom was talking about, when he talked about the rigor of curriculum and how people really need to rise to the challenge. I would say that what resonated with folks as they saw What's Your Plan and those who asked us for more information was that they saw that there was something that they could do. They saw people who had taken the time to get their degrees, and it really resonated with them that they too could get their degrees and that they could rise to the challenge. And so lastly, one of the things that What's Your Plan did was debunk some myths. The one I like the most is the one that makes my hair kind of go on fire when I hear about two-year higher education as last choice. And so I want to share with you a story from Rotary in Billings. The Billings Rotary, about a month ago, they have students, high school students, who come to Rotary. And at that time, the students are, I believe they're getting a scholarship from Rotary, or they're a part of a broader group that will perhaps get a scholarship. And the students stand up and they talk about themselves and they talk about their future career plans, and they introduce their parents. It's really a wonderful, wonderful event. And I realized that day, I thought, you know, one of these days, one of these students is going to talk about going to City College. Because when students stand up and talk, they'll talk about, I'm going to go to MSU Billings, or I'm going to go to UM, or I'm going to go to MSU. Or for some students, their families, are from private schools, and they're going to go to a private school. So I'd somewhat zoned out, because it's a time when students talk about what their goals are. And suddenly, a young man who was very organized, presented himself very well, from Skyview High School. He said, well, my plan after high school is that I'm going to go to City College, and I'm going to study nursing at City College. I tell you, it was pretty exciting for me. So it was great to see, and I hope to see it again. And I wanted to say that it really was worth the money that it cost, the investment that City College and MSU Billings made for City College. I think that we're seeing a lot of buzz about City College, and our community has always been wonderful supporters of two-year higher education, and they like seeing that we're out advertising it. So thank you.
Chairman Kraus, members of the board, I would just like to take this moment to express my sincere appreciation to Ms. Annie Knoll, Strategies 360, Chancellor Groseth, Dean Riley, and Mr. Klingen-Smith, and all of MSU Billings for participating in this pilot. Thank you.
Well, thank you. How about some questions for the panel? Any questions? Yes.
Marketing departments at the university system have not been as robust as they could have been in the last 20, 30 years, mostly because universities tell their story with their brand. Their reputation allows for marketing to kind of take a backseat. University of Montana's marketing presence has significantly increased, and mostly due to the gentleman they hired there, Mario Schultzke, and his basic premise is marketing is here to tell a story, and at university systems, you have the incredible opportunity to tell so many different stories. It's a refreshing relief to move from the corporate world to academia because you have so many opportunities. And to see the two-year campuses taking a very systemic approach to this issue is very exciting, and I hope it continues, and that also our other flagship and our current flagship at continue, because I think this really serves Montana well.
Thank you, Regent Rogala. Just to put some numbers with this, we have spent in the 6 months that'll end November 30th about $90,000. We quickly reallocated those funds for this project. We plan to continue at least through a year from now, because our target in this campaign was adults, and they have a longer lead-in period to changing their lives to go to education. And so we believe we've moved the needle on awareness, and in fact really have done that, and feel that the campaign will be promising not only for alerting people to the existence of City College, but actually changing enrollment.
Other questions? Any other questions? So, yes.
Thank you, Chairman Kraus. I'm curious about the market that you're striving for. You talked about adults. The campaign, I've seen this out there. It's very visually appealing, and it catches your attention. I think it was effective in that way, and it certainly sounds like it's producing some inquiries that you maybe wouldn't have seen. But the approach, say especially through social media, is that, are you finding a new market there, since that's, and I'll just say it because I'm older, is that it's for a younger set of adults, and I'm just curious what kind of impact that has had.
Go ahead.
Regent Robinson, I can just let you know the demographic breakdown on our Facebook fans. 49% are between the ages of 18 and 34. And so that would leave about 50%, 51% would be over the age of 34. And Marcia can talk a little bit about the people that she talked to who filled out the request for information form.
Yeah, so when people asked for more information, we had a plan of how we would get that information to them, and then myself and other people would call them. And truly there were, I was surprised when I would talk to a young student. I talked to a couple of high school students who were in Hardin, wanted to get some fire science information. So that was interesting for me, and some parents, some moms who wanted to make sure that their kids went to school. But mostly the people that I talked to were clearly 30 years old.
And Regent Robinson, I would say that social media ends up being social. And so actually, when we ask people where they heard about this, the most frequent answer was from other people. And so there was radio, there was online, there was advertising on buses, but people talked to one another about it.
Well, and I'll just add that I did like it on my Facebook page, so I'm raising that demographic up a little bit.
What a relief. Major Robinson's moved into the 21st century. Just a couple of things. I want to echo something that Ms. Knoll said, which was she did help with the informational campaign for the Gallatin College, and I think it was a great help. And right now, there is a lot of information out there about Gallatin College, and I think it's her comment about a timely time to strike, okay? Timely time. We've renaming all the colleges will not do anything by itself. without in marketing those now. You've got to take the next step. We have to take the next step. We have to find it within our budgets to prioritize that. The flagships do a lot of advertising, okay? The 2 years don't. And I think a coherent 2-year policy across the state, what's your plan? Start at the 2-year college. We want those transfer degrees that only went up 3%. We need to make that a point of emphasis. So I would like to say again, now is the time to follow up on the name changes, the new buildings, the new levy, all of the things that are happening, and market 2-year schools. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Sack.
Regent Krause will move very, very quickly. As a part of our partnerships with the community colleges, with College Now, and the effort to reach out to adults and help adults return to or continue on to college, especially adults who may have completed their GED later in life. We provided a grant to Miles Community College through College Now, and we wanted to provide a brief update on this, a very successful grant, especially with Judy Hyman present today. Sue will provide a brief introduction.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Regent Krause. As John said, through College Now, we had the unique opportunity for 2-year colleges to actually partner with our adult basic education programs in their communities on a pilot project that we called a bridge program. This is a bridge for adults and adult basic education who have goals to go on to college after completing their high school equivalency. College Now, through the Lumina Foundation, offered 3 $10,000 awards to college campuses and adult basic education programs to create helpful ways to transition from adult basic ed on to college. Of the 7 applicants for the awards, 3 were chosen to pilot programs. Highlands College with Deer Lodge and Anaconda adult basic education programs, Great Falls College with the Great Falls Community Able adult basic education program, and Miles Community College with the Miles City Able program. Today I'm going to introduce you to Erin Nidji, who is going to talk to you a little bit about the Miles Community College program.
Thank you, committee members, members of the board. My name is Erin Nidji. I'm the Dean of Enrollment Management and Educational Support Services at Miles Community College. And as part of my duties at MCC, I serve as the program director for our Adult Basic Education, or ABE program. There are 18 adult basic education programs located throughout the state, and these programs receive a combination of federal and state grants that are administered by the Office of Public Instruction. Many ABE programs are housed within local school districts. Some are located on 2-year campuses, as ours is, and others are housed in community agencies such as libraries or community health centers. Because our ABE program is located on a college campus and has been for many, many years, our staff already had key relationships in place with campus officials. But despite the fact that we were easily able to refer students to the appropriate offices for admissions, financial aid, and advising, we still watched as our GED graduates, even those who did very well on the GED, entered college and failed to be successful. They left with student loan debt, with Fs on transcripts that would affect them should they return to school later on, and with little self-confidence in their ability to really make a positive change in their career and their lives. They'd come so far and worked so hard to achieve their goals, their high school equivalency, yet they found barriers to further improvement. And so as we developed our model in writing our grant application, we knew that many of the barriers that our students faced were not necessarily academic. We knew that the students were bright and capable, and that they could be successful in the classroom if they were given the right tools. So what most of them lacked was just a familiarity with the system, awareness of the college process, and an understanding of what it meant to enter college in terms of workload, time commitment, persistence, and things like that. As an example, what I found myself explaining most often as I met individually with our bridge students was the concept of a college credit hour, just what that meant in terms of the time spent in and outside the classroom, what that meant for commitment, amount of time they'd have to commit to their education. Those of us that work in higher ed, I think, kind of take for granted knowing about such things and need to realize that some of our students who aren't familiar with it need to be informed of such basic things. Most of our GED students that enter college are first-generation college students, and some of them are first-generation high school graduates. Working in two-year ed, many of us are familiar with the challenges faced by first-generation students, but the challenges faced by students who've had poor past experiences with formal educational settings, challenges they face are even greater and are often exacerbated by a lack of support and understanding from family and friends. So as we developed our program, we focused on ensuring that our students receive the knowledge and skills necessary to successfully navigate the college process. We built on our relationships with our campus student affairs offices. We further cemented contacts with financial aid and our branch of the Student Assistance Foundation, for example, so that our students would have one primary contact to go to for all things financial aid related or financial literacy related. We provided supplemental orientation and advising procedures for our students, almost an orientation to orientation, making sure that they were kind of aware of what they'd be doing once they actually started that enrollment process. And we did, of course, focus on academic preparation as well. Our vice president for academics did give us permission to offer non-credit developmental education classes on a rolling basis so that students would not have to wait for the college semester to begin if they completed their GED in February, for example. And so we work closely with our developmental instructors on MCC's campus, with a math instructor who had already been offering accelerated developmental ed offerings in the summer. We worked with him to mirror what he was doing with Alex, a web-based adaptive math program, to offer that to our students, and that's what we spent some of our grant money on, was purchasing those Alex class units for our bridge students. And we also work closely with our Sarah Pett, our developmental reading and writing instructor, to make sure that the content we are covering in our non-credit, no-cost developmental reading and writing courses mirrored what she was doing in the classroom. So we use the same textbooks, have the same course outcomes. It's just done on a slightly different timeline for the students coming directly off of the GED program. And most importantly, we began offering our bridge program enrollment to every student who entered our GED program. We wanted every student to see this as an option, to be able to visualize themselves as college material. And so we specifically implemented our program so that it would run concurrently with their GED preparation. Rather than waiting for them to complete their GED, then talking to them about college, we wanted it to be a more seamless transition. And so we wanted them to see their education, their career goals as an ongoing process, not just a stair step with a landing where they could exit and stop off once they got their GED. So we implemented sort of a career pathways course. It included a bridge checklist that students would complete as they worked through the program, and completion of the checklist allowed them to receive some incentives, such as paying for the placement test for their college application fee. We already used Pep Talk and the Montana Career Information Systems pretty extensively in our program, but we kind of stepped this up for our bridge students, giving them a chance to do some additional career exploration. For those that knew the track they wanted to take, they were able to do some research into the type of training needed for the career they were looking at, job placement and wage outlooks, that sort of thing. Our students, as part of the checklist, developed college study skills, filled out a scholarship application, received personalized help with the admissions application. So a lot of different factors, again, of that whole college application and enrollment process were covered. And in just the year, a little more than a year since we've received the grant and really implemented the program, I think we've seen a lot of success from our students, much improved from what we saw before we implemented the program. You'll get to hear from Karen, one of our bridge graduates, in just a moment, but we have many other student success stories. And I think some of the most telling factor of the success is that students like Karen, who finished her GED with us, originally enrolled at Miles Community College and then has since moved to Helena and transferred to Helena College. We have another student who has moved to Sheridan and is looking at Sheridan College. These students are still being successful once they've left. So it's not just that we are hand-holding them at MCC or with our program. We're truly giving them the skills they need to be successful as they progress on. And so to me, that's really the most validating aspect of this. I hate to see them leave. Miles, obviously, we develop wonderful relationships with these students, but it's really gratifying for us to see that they're able to be successful once they move on. And so I will turn it over to Karen. Karen Hardy is one of our students. She completed her GED with us a couple of years ago, and I'll let her tell you a little bit about herself.
Good afternoon. When I stepped into the Miles City Community College, I was, I believe, 43 years old, had 5 kids. All of them had been grown and gone, and I have grandbabies myself. When I walked in, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, but I did know I wanted to get my GED. And with the help of Aaron and Shelley and Melinda, wonderful women, oh my goodness, they're still holding my hand to this day. I can call them anytime and say, hey, I have a problem, and they're usually right there. But when I walked in, I was kind of afraid because I had such a rough life. My life was horrible. And I had quit school when I was 16 years old. And before I had quit school, I had a huge goal in mind. I was an athlete. I was a track star. And I was starting with the coaches in Great Falls, that's where I'm from, was starting to train me for doing some of the Olympic programs. And 2 weeks into my 10th grade year, I ended up getting pregnant. There went my career as an athlete. There went my my school education. Then, of course, no college. So I had to wait until my kids were all grown. I worked 3 jobs. I was married for 18 years. I worked 3 jobs to support my family. Got divorced from him and got married again. And in both relationships, I had no support whatsoever. I did attempt twice in 2 different marriages to go back to school and get an education. My first husband said, no, you're not. He was the type of guy that would keep a close rein on you. If I wasn't within eye distance, it wasn't going to happen. Second one was more of a person that treated me like I was stupid. In fact, told me on a military installation where I could get my GED for free was that I wasn't smart enough to do it. So many years I kept thinking I'm not going to be able to do this, and it's just wasting my time. But when I did attempt to do my GED and took my test, I got good grades on that. So I knew that I could, but for some reason I was being told, no, you can't, it's not going to work. So when I divorced the second one, I met somebody else, and that third person is very supportive. And when I told him that I wanted to go to get my GED, he said, yeah, you go right ahead, do it. So I still had this I'm not going to be able to do it attitude when I walked into MCC. And from day one, they held my hand. I remember calling Melinda saying, math is my really worst subject, and Alex was an amazing program. And I remember calling Melinda up and saying, you know what, I just don't know if I can do this. She says, Karen, you're there. You're there. You're getting good grades. You're doing, all your work. You're here constantly. You can do this. So I did it. And I had a goal. I was 1 week off of my goal. I wanted to graduate with the same class that everybody else was graduating in. I was a week off, but I did graduate, and I did get my GED, and in the Bridge program and the ALEX program. I want to speak a little bit about the ALEX program, because if it wasn't for that, I don't think I probably would have gotten the highest scores on my math test. Integers are my worst things, and I'm doing those in college right now, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I want to reach out and put Melinda in my back pocket just to get me through it, but I don't think that's going to happen either. But the Bridge program, and if it wasn't for this college, I don't think I'd be here, and without the assistance of my fiance as well. I think that I have some major people in my life right now that I would never, ever have done it without them, I don't think.
Thank you, Karen. And this is one of several success stories we know about, and we hope we can continue with campuses doing programs such as this to help people make the transition from adult basic education onto that first step onto that college campus. Any questions? Comments?
Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Regent Krause. My thanks to each of you and to each of the campuses who implemented the Bridge programs. Congratulations. Karen, your story is very compelling, and I think you had the attention of every person in this room, and it is a very important story that I hope resonates with all of us about the importance of the opportunities before us to provide opportunities for folks like you in their communities to not only get their GED, but once they've got it, to provide through our campuses the structure, advising, and support to ensure your success in getting the GED, and then once application is made to a post-secondary institution, to completion. And so one of the conversations we had at Complete College America a couple of weeks ago was about those non-traditional students and how they benefit from very strong advising, how they benefit from a structured program. And then at the end of the day, how we on our campuses need to make sure that there is significant support for those students. And I want to applaud the efforts of College Now for making sure that this happened. I think the road is very long for us as a university system to ensure that we leave no person in any community without opportunities. And so I would challenge all of the campuses to leave no stone unturned in developing programs, if you don't already have one, and aggressively seeking folks like Karen, and ultimately providing each of them the structure, advising, and support that they need. Thank you so very much for a great report today.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes, Dr. Sack.
I just would like to add, Karen, you're an inspiration. Thank you very much for taking the time to share with us today. And I also want to express my sincere appreciation to the faculty and staff and leadership of Miles Community College for their participation in this pilot. I think they've set a great foundation for other colleges to adopt in the state.
Thank you so much. And I do think I've seen a lot of speakers up here with a lot more trepidation and nervousness than you. So well done. Yeah.
Thank you. Hopefully I'll get extra credit for being here.
What do we got next, Dr. Sack?
Regent Krause, we are pleased to provide an overview of the dual enrollment recommendations as a result of the work done by the task force, the dual enrollment task force this year, which included broad representation of 2-year, 4-year faculty, staff, leadership, the Montana Education Association, as well as the Office of Public Instruction. And Amy, if you can take us to recommendations 1 through 6, I would like to just take a few moments and walk through these recommendations, because I think, as Deputy Commissioner Trevor mentioned yesterday, we have witnessed growth in dual enrollment in Montana, 53% growth in about the last 18 months. But it's not enough. We began at a position that we were essentially 35th in the nation, and we want to change that. We are changing it. But we see the task force has come forward with some recommendations that we feel will help us to grow dual enrollment, which is a priority of this board, the governor, and the Office of Public Instruction. And so we have 6 recommendations we are working on. The first one is to basically look at, convene a group to take a look at what will it take to incentivize, motivate high school teachers who may have a master's degree but may not have 9 graduate credits in their discipline. What would it take to work with those teachers to create some incentives for them to complete the 9 credits, which would allow them to meet the Board of Regents' minimum qualifications to teach university transferable courses? Recommendation number 2, and I think the entire group was behind this, and that is convening a group to review the Class 8 licensure process, to look at how ways, strategies to update it, to streamline the approval process, basically to make it more efficient, so that the campuses can move more faculty who are interested in teaching dual enrollment through the Class 8 review process. Recommendation 3, again, this relates to some of the other work groups that our DevEd task force, as an example, is we're looking at creating consistent standards in the Montana university system regarding concurrent enrollment in areas including but not limited to pay, assessment, textbooks, site visits, evaluations, and participation in campus orientations. And I had the opportunity to pull in some input from the 2-year CEOs over the last couple of days. We have some great best practices out there at some of our different campuses, Flathead, Montana Tech, Helena College, to name a few. And so how can we really take those best practices and scale them up from best practice perspective? Recommendation 4, convene a group to explore allowing national board certification within a disciplinary focus to be an alternative for the 9 graduate credits in the subject area. Many states are doing this. Marco Ferro from the MEA MFT pulled some of the numbers. For instance, in the Billings School District, we have 23 teachers in the Billings School District who have a master's degree and are nationally board certified. Recommendation 5, review the dual enrollment student application process and check for adherence to approved Montana University standards. We felt that was very important. And then recommendation 6, review the funding model for the current and future expansion of dual enrollment in the state of Montana. Mr. Chair, that concludes the recommendations that our task force is working on.
Any questions for Dr. Seck? This is a big part of what we're trying to do, so big part. And you can see how much work it's going to take with different groups to get it done. So thank you all for paying attention to that. Do we have one more?
Mr. Chair, I would like to invite...
Regent Krause.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just want to make one comment. Thank you, Chairman Krause. The governor has made it clear to me that this is a high priority for him and would like to extend thank you to Deputy Commissioner Seck and those on the task force. And as a former high school teacher, I would strongly encourage you to draw your attention to recommendation number 1. Certainly all of those recommendations are worthy of careful consideration, but recommendation 1, I strongly believe that where the rubber meets the road is the classroom teacher. And if we are talking about program building, I continue to use the analogy of the cross-country coach. If the cross-country coach is trying to build a program, he or she is consistently recruiting students in the lunchroom and in the classroom. And so if there are incentives for that high school teacher, who is overwhelmed with the Common Core and their lesson plans and calling parents and the other responsibilities they had. When I was teaching, I had 145 students every day coming through my classroom. The concept of going back to school to take that 9 credits would be overwhelming. So I would encourage you to kind of prioritize that piece, and there might be others as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Chairman
I think
McLean.
well stated. And I would fully concur with what you just said and add that perhaps it would be fitting for Deputy Commissioner Seck to pull together a group with him, someone from the Superintendent of Public Instruction's office, the folks at MEMFT, who have the majority of the teachers K-12 across the state, and determine how indeed those incentives could happen, because there would have to be some serious conversations regarding those CBAs. But I think that you're right. I think there's opportunities out there, as you just mentioned. I think there's faculty out there who stand ready now, and faculty who we could take a very short time and have ready to fill the need in the most rural parts of our state to provide face-to-face dual enrollment. Dr. Seck, to you and your task force, thank you so very much for the time that you have put into these recommendations. And then just one other thing as we consider this very important conversation regarding dual enrollment, and it is a significant priority of this board's, of the governor's, I think of the superintendent of public instructions, and potentially consider its place in our performance funding model. The only caution I would have is that we make sure that as we move forward that in our consideration of the hub conversation, that we don't punish those schools who aggressively went out and sought face-to-face opportunities years ago, and then trying to get back into the hub piece, their numbers may decline if they lose the course or classes that they have been teaching for a while to the campus that's closer to the delivery high school. So that's all that I would ask, and I thank you very much for your great leadership, and to all of the members of the task force, thank you so very much. I think we're on the cusp of some great things for Montana students here.
Yes, again, and thank you. Can I call you Dr. O'Brien now? Thank you, Dr. O'Brien, for pitching in. And I think there are some costs to that in particular, which will involve compensation and different kinds of education programs over the summer, those kinds of things, and incentives. So you're right on spot, and it is one of those things that needs to be in the legislative plan, right? A specific one. Yes, Dr. Seck, sometimes we forget that with all this talk about Gallatin College, there's another community battering down the door, right?
Chairman Kraus, thank you very much. And the final item we have today is a very important but quick recognition by Heather Margolis from the Service Nation of a student from Bitterroot College. And Heather, I appreciate your help. We're on a really tight time frame.
Thank you. I'll keep it quick. My name is Heather Margolis. I'm with Service Nation Montana, and I would like to thank you, Chairwoman, members of the Board of Regents. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for your service to Montana, to our students, and to the economy, which we know you support through your efforts. I would like to present this award, Excellence in Service, to Rock Turner, who is a Navy veteran and an AmeriCorps VISTA member serving with Montana Campus Compact. And the award is for your service as a Navy veteran and continued service and exemplary performance as an AmeriCorps VISTA, breaking cycles of poverty by creating awareness and pathways to increase college affordability and access to higher education. Thank you for your support and your commitment not only to country, but also to our Montana communities. And I give you a moment to thank some others. And I would also like to thank Dr. Dean McGovern for your support at Montana Campus Compact.
And please step forward, and we'll give them some applause in a minute, but would you like to say something? I mean, you're there in a very vital place. So, if you want to, fine, but it wouldn't be a good award without allowing you to give us a few words of wisdom.
Well, first, I'd just like to thank the Board of Regents, the University of Montana, Montana Campus Compact, and Bitterroot College for allowing me to serve the needs of my community, interact with kids and adults that are seeking higher education. It means a lot to me. It certainly is my pleasure. I'm happy to serve, and I hope to be here for a long time.
You're an inspiration. Thank you.
I guess we got time.
And we would sing for Pizza Jolly Bella, but we have time. As everybody's coming back, I would open it up at this time to public comment. Is there any public comment for the Two-Year Education and Community College Committee? Yes, thank you.
And I promise to be very brief. Members of the board and colleagues, my name's Pam Fisher. I am a member of the Gallatin College Advisory Board. And I just wanted to just take one moment to say to you that 4 years ago, almost to the day, in this very room, I addressed the Board of Regents, and I encourage you to expand your efforts in the growth of the two-year colleges in Montana generally, to support the transformation of those colleges, and specifically to support the establishment of what eventually became Gallatin College. I have to tell you quite frankly that the reactions I got to my comments were mixed. But among those mixed comments was great enthusiasm from community leaders and local educators. And I'm just pleased to stand here 4 years later and say, thank you for the decision you made 3 years ago to establish Gallatin College. Thank you for the support from Commissioner Christian and Deputy Commissioner Seck. And thank you, most of all, for the extraordinary leadership of President Cruzado and Dean Hayatella. We're really proud of what's happening in Gallatin College, but as I sat here for the last 2 days, I realized that it's only symptomatic or symbolic of the wonderful progress that's been made throughout the whole state. So I'd like to commend you and also congratulate you, but also encourage you to keep on that same path. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the $20 is in the mail. Are there other public comments today for the Two-Year Education and Community College Committee? Any other public comment? Any other public comment? Yes.
Following up on that, I think that's right, and accolades and congratulations to the state for progress there is outstanding. And that conversation to create Gallatin College was unique, and this board, in my opinion, handled it very responsibly in light of restriction and resources that we face. And I just can't tell you how proud I am of you, Regent Krause, and WADED for your leadership in bringing the community of the Gallatin Valley into the fold by putting in a permanent funding source. And I know how hard it is, as you said this morning, Regent Krause, to vote yes for that permanent tax increase, but you clearly have demonstrated the value with incredible stewardship to this community. And you two, I know that you took a primary lead, if not maybe the only lead in the community as far as public faces pushing for that. And it clearly has public support. And thank you so much for your leadership on behalf of that election.
Thank you for that, Regent Buchanan. Any other public comment? Then, Madam Chair, this committee meeting is over, and it's back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Krause. Okay, at this point, we will move to the committee reports, discussion, and action, and we'll begin with the Staff and Compensation Committee. I want to once again thank and congratulate Kevin and the bargaining units for their settling. And at this point, I would also entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda for the Staff and Compensation Committee.
So moved.
Thank you. A motion has been made. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Is there any public comment?
There is, Madam Chair?
Yes.
And this is the consent agenda, correct?
Yes.
Okay, there are 2 items under the labor agreements that were mentioned yesterday that we may have to take off of that consent agenda. And those 2 items, I'm in favor of moving this forward, but those 2 items are items B under labor agreements and item E. So I would like to move that forward with those 2
Pulled out?
omitted. Yes.
Okay. Okay. So a motion has been made, and we just will remove those 2 items then. and we can consider the rest of the consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments? Just so the board is clear, we'll move everything forward, and then we'll vote on those, and then we'll specifically discuss and revisit B and E of the labor agreements. So any questions or comments from members of the board? Is there any public comment? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Okay, a motion has been made to approve the consent agenda with the exception of B and E. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. The motion carries. So now we will begin by visiting item B. Regent Robinson, would you like to speak to? Okay. Okay, so we're done. Okay, those were just removed.
Okay.
Why? Kevin, will you tell us what's going on?
Madam Chair, members of the board, those two items are removed simply because we don't have ratified agreements in those two areas yet. We're close, but don't quite have it.
That's right. Thank you very much. Okay, the next agenda we have is the ARSA committee agenda. And so we do have one action item, and that is the policy revision 320-1. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
A motion has been made. Are there questions or comments from members of the board? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? Okay, a motion has been made. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. The motion carries. The next item we have on the ARSA is the consent agenda, and that was the Mr. Pip candidates. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
A motion has been made. Are there questions or comments from members of the board? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? A motion has been made. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. The motion carries. Okay. Okay, and then the last item that we have is the Budget Committee. And so we will begin with action item A, the construction projects and bond issuance for MSU Bozeman.
Move approval of item A, construction projects and bond issuance. for
A motion
MSU
has
Bozeman.
been made by Regent Kraus. Are there questions or comments from members of the board? Thank you, Mick, for joining us. Yes, Regent Rogala.
There's concern from both students and community members that short-term gains in student population might not necessarily warrant large investments of this kind that Montana State is looking into. However, with the presentation and the average age of the, dormitory residences at Montana State's campus and the lack of significant investment in the last 45 years, I think that this bonding issue is warranted, and I'm going to be voting in favor of it.
Thank you, Regent Rogala. Further questions or comments from members of the board?
Yes, please. To support my motion, I would first say that I do think it's important that costs be held down on this. The cost per bed of the last construction project seem abnormally high to me. I've talked to the members of the campus, and they are making every effort to keep those costs down this time, and I think we'll see a much lower per bed cost, and so with that assurance, I will be voting in favor.
Thank you. Further questions or comments from members of the board? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? Okay, a motion has been made. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. The motion carries. We'll now move on to item B. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
A motion has been made to approve item B. Excuse me. Are there questions or comments from members of the board? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? A motion has been made. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. The motion carries. I would entertain a motion on item C. A motion has been made. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Regent Kraus.
Madam Chair, just that adaptive reuse of existing buildings, recycling, if you will, large-scale recycling is something that the university system should be doing. I can think of an example here on campus, and just want to always be alert for those kinds of opportunities in our communities. So I will be supporting the motion.
Super. Thanks, Regent Kraus. Further questions or comments from members of the board? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? A motion has been made. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. The motion carries. Okay. The next item on our agenda is the revision of our policy 1003-4. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
A motion has been made. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? A motion has been made. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. The motion carries. The next item, item E, I would entertain a motion. A motion has been made to approve item E. Are there questions or comments from members of the board? Regent Rogala.
I'm in support of the expansion of discretionary powers for the commissioner to really work on a lot of day-to-day issues that come up with the university system. I just like to continue to have that discussion to see how this expansion of budgetary authority could work in collaboration with student government projects who are looking to seek additional revenue for student fee activities on campus. So I'd like to continue that discussion in the future.
Thank you. Point made and received. Thank you, Regent Rogala.
Madam
Yes,
Chair,
Regent Kraus.
just, I thought seriously about amending this to try to get it up to the statutory limit of $500,000. Again, I wouldn't have any problem with that, but I think this is a fine compromise. I do think we will find ourselves still reviewing elevators and parking lots and those kinds of things, which are somewhat not part of what the Board of Regents should be concentrating on. We should be concentrating on that last discussion and other discussions, not this stuff. So I would encourage this to come forward again, perhaps in another year, and try to get this done.
Thank you. Good point. Solid waste disposals. Yes. Further questions or comments from members of the board? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? A motion has been made. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. The motion carries. The next item on our agenda is item F. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
A motion has been made. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Yes, Regent Rogala.
Just to restate from yesterday, this is going to paint a lot of barns, and I'm looking forward to this grant.
Further questions or comments from members of the board? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? A motion has been made. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. The motion carries. The next item on our agenda is revising the operating budgets. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Thank you, Regent Rogala. A motion has been made. Are there questions or comments from members of the board? Regent Rogala.
Is it practical for us to combine A through E and do a consent approval? Is that appropriate?
We will in just a moment. We'll just do G right now, and then we certainly will do, I think, the full consent together. unless you'd like to pull something from it. Okay? So right now, we're on item G, the revised operating budgets.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just my gratitude for the hard work that was done after the budget meeting where I asked for a different presentation, got a different presentation. It really is a chance to talk about what it is we're doing with this grant, and my congratulations to the people who are working so hard on it.
Thank you. Further questions or comments from members of the board? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? A motion has been made. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. The motion carries. Now we're on to the consent agenda. Are there any items that a member would like to pull? Seeing none then, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda. A motion has been made to approve the consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments from members of the board? Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? A motion has been made to approve the consent agenda. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. The motion carries. Okay. So there were not any action items on the 2-year agenda, so that will put us in the point of our agenda for public comment. Is there any public comment? Any public comment? Okay, now that we are getting ready to conclude, I would just invite all attendees to attend a ribbon cutting ceremony for the Blackstone Launch Pad. I want to thank all of you for the very productive work that you're doing. Thank you to the Board of Regents for your commitment to our campuses and to all of the students on each. Enjoy the game tomorrow. This meeting stands adjourned.